30 seconds. Please check your microphones. Ten seconds. We're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the April 20th, 2026 Board of Education meeting. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones and then join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Secretary Ringgold, can you take roll for us, please?
President Roush.
Here.
Vice President McFarland is not here. Secretary Ringgold here. Treasurer Lauterbach. Here. Trustee Blasey.
Here.
Trustee Craig.
Here.
Trustee Horowitz is not here yet, but on her way.
Yep. Thank you. Item number 2. So note for the public that's joined us tonight. Welcome your public comments. I'll just note that we do have 3 different sections for public comment tonight. We have this first one, that's the budget workshop. Item number 6 is the normal course of business opportunity, and then item number 8 is the opportunity to address the board on sex education. So with that, I do have Joe signed up to address the board on the budget workshop.
Greetings. Regarding the budget side, are you going to replace the assistant superintendent position after Mr. Bruton retires? That position did not exist, and I was wondering if we were going to return to the previous administration budgetary levels or continue with that expansion. Just a question. Member Lauterbach had mentioned in previous bond campaign how well-positioned MPS was for getting a low interest rate on our bonds. This year, you are on pace to run a $7.5 million deficit, thus reducing your fund balance for the second year in a row. I don't know exactly where the line is, but another large deficit this year is not going to make you more attractive to a lender. I've heard mentioned often in the past of lean years where the board had to make tough decisions. Maybe now is the time to think about turning the ship when it will be less painful. The ESSER fund feast is over. When I asked Mr. Sharrow a few years ago about what was going to happen when that spigot was turned off, he said attrition, just so we all know where that train is going at your current spending pattern. Thank you.
Anybody else care to address the board on the budget workshop? All right. Item number 3, board discussion and prioritization for the 26-27 general fund budget. Turn it over to Anna.
Good evening. Starting out, public school budget is not advisory in nature, but rather an accounting of the source and uses of public funds. Tonight, we're going to go through a little bit of the history of getting us to where we are, as well as our initial look at 26-27. Looking at timeline, our next revision will be in June. We continue to be in our overlap cycle right now where we're continuously monitoring this year's budget while investing significant time in the development of the 26-27 budget. Governor's proposals in, we've been analyzing this while building our department budget request, structure next year's expenditures, and staffing is underway. We will continue to refine our projections in preparation to present an initial 26-27 budget to the Board of Education on June 15th for adoption. Purpose of this workshop is to provide an overview of our current budget status, historical reference, and to give initial projections and review priorities. Looking at our fiscal year 25 audit for where we came in, we continue to be in a solid financial position. This has afforded us the opportunity to invest in our employees and assign dollars to lines within our general fund. We need to be cautious moving forward as the ESSER dollars have expired. State funding has been a little bit up in the air, and we must continuously re-examine programming for continued needs and sustainability to continue to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We had been fortunate to add to the fund balance over the past several years. However, the percentage and fund balance did drop a little bit this past year due to additional expenditures due to planned strategic spending. Healthy fund balance is important for several key reasons. One, it prevents needing to borrow for cash flow purposes during the summer months. Two, it affords for opportunities to address needs and priorities, such as student services and instruction, employee compensation and capital projects, and it assists in maintaining programming during years with fiscal challenges. COVID-19 was a perfect example of this. To not borrow money to make payroll, we need to maintain a minimum of approximately $13 to $14 million, and our board policy states that we need to maintain a general fund percentage of 12%. Looking at our 25-26 general fund snapshot, our fund balance on 6/30/25 was audited at $35,624,972, which was a bigger variance than our final prediction. We had predicted 2%, that came in at a 4.9% variance. Our prediction was at $32,168,846. Keep in mind here, a variance of 1% is around $1.21 million. And we will continue to fine-tune our expenditures and revenues as the third and fourth quarters of this fiscal year progress. Looking at our general fund expenditures by function, currently sitting at around that 121 million mark. Our instruction and student supports make up 75.4% of that budget, which is over 3/4 of our entire budget. And a reminder that 83.5% of this budget goes towards salaries and benefits for our staff. Taking a closer look at our adopted budgets versus our audited changes over the past several years, pink represents adopted deficit budgets within there. We were fortunate to have several fiscal years to add to our fund balance with a planned deficit last year. While this year's imbalance is still unknown, our projections are that we will have a deficit budget as we continue a planned strategic spend down, but this all depends on our variance. It's not uncommon to adopt a deficit budget and end closer to balanced or even slightly above, as has happened in the past. Midland Public Schools' financial health can be attributed to the following factors. Our enrollment stability. From 08-09 to 14-15, we were losing an average of 209 students per year. We started to course correct in 15-16, and from 15-16 to 25-26, that decreases an average of 41 students per year. We had an addition of strategic programming such as developmental kindergarten, our STEM programs, IB, our PYP program, PATHS, ALPS, etc. We are currently looking, as you will discuss tonight, at an additional alternative school, which we believe will also help within here. We also had facilities improvements. We had a bond campaign in 2015, which helped with our enrollment stability too, attracting families back within district. Enrollment is an area to monitor closely right now, as our traditional models didn't take COVID-19 into account, and we've worked diligently on our projections internally and with our consultants. And we will continue looking at models as enrollments kind of stabilizes, and our consultants believe that we should remain kind of on this stable trajectory right now. Looking within there, we show kind of what we just talked about, that we have seen a little bit of a larger drop for a while with the addition of the programs that we put in. We've seen a little bit more of a stabilization within there. The state as a whole continues to lose students, so this trajectory is following along with state lines right now. Looking at our financial status from 08-09 to 13-14, we saw an average decrease in state funding from $113 per student. From 14-15 to 25-26, we were able to see an average increase of $154 per student. However, we do want to remind you that due to the restructure of the hold harmless millage calculation and the historic foundation allowance equalization in 21-22, the Midland Public School collections beyond the foundation have been significantly equalized. In 2015, we did have our bond where we did see the demolition of unused properties, increased energy efficiency, and we were able to see less reliance on the general fund for capital improvements, technology, and bus purchasing. Looking at employee contributions, there were contractual sacrifices from all employee groups in the past. They saw 0% or concessionary compensation from 10-11 to 16-17. However, raises were restored in 17-18 school year and have occurred each year since, which is 9 consecutive years running for all employee groups. Additional miscellaneous financial decisions that were put into place to bring us up to a more stable financial status were administrative restructuring of central office, teacher retirement incentive, which gave us a short-term savings there, increased grant procurement at both the state level and in the private sector, annual variance with our strategic use of annual funding, and other measures to make sure that we are being as financially stable and prudent as possible. Raises have accelerated due to the labor market largely created by the effects of the pandemic, which is something to keep in mind as we move forward. Speaking of the pandemic, we did get federal and state supplementary funds to help weather the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Between all state and federal sources, we received a little over $13.2 million. However, all of these funds were spent at the conclusion of the 23-24 school year. Looking at State Bulletin 1014, we like to review this annually to measure our spending and provide an overview of how we compare amongst other school districts. In terms of revenues per pupil, we've seen a significant decrease in our rank to the middle of the pack in 1920, which was largely due to the 2X formula. There was a bounce back in 2021 attributed to the influx of federal COVID relief funds. And over the past 2 years, we anticipate our total revenue to continue to migrate towards the middle of the bell curve or around the 50th percentile due to that equalization of the foundation allowance among schools and the hold harmless tax law revisions. As you can see within there, we did see decreases towards that middle of the pack as predicted in local sources, state sources, federal sources, and of course looking at it as overall. This year, when compared to school districts, we are looking at our comparison to 814 districts total. Looking at where we stand within our instructional programs, our basic programs, we went towards the middle of the pack again. We do continue to prioritize investing in our classroom and the educational experience of our students. But of note within here is the instructional salaries and benefits. We know that several districts had renegotiated.
Can you advance this slide?
Oh, sorry, my apologies. The benefits of going between what's on my screen and what's on yours. Thank you. Looking within here, we do know that several districts renegotiated on a year earlier basis than us. These financial rankings are looking at 24-25. We anticipate when we have rankings next year for 25-26, we will see a slight uptick in our instructional salaries and benefits due to our renegotiated contract with the teachers union. Looking at our expenditures for our support staff, they continue to reflect that we are operating efficiently in business administrations and operations, focusing dollars on our instructions and services for students. While these areas are a point of pride, it is a cause for consistent thought and reflection in investing resources strategically in these areas to recruit and retain talent in these employee categories. While there's been chatter within the community that MPS is top-heavy with administration, this ranking paints a different picture that the district is actually operating very lean and is ranked towards the bottom of all public school districts in Michigan for spending on business and administration on a per-pupil basis. Additionally, I'd like to point out that our expenditures and rank for operations and maintenance only takes into consideration what was spent on that area from the general fund, does not take into account what was spent on this area out of the capital improvements fund. Looking at our average teacher salaries, again, a lot of this we believe is due to the cycle for renegotiation. We have included this data point in our budget workshop presentation, as this was not traditionally presented for several years, but you can see that it consistently places us normally in the top quartile in average teacher pay in Michigan annually. And the year-over-year change is attributed to retirement, staff replacement, approximately 40 teachers each year, as we tend to see our veteran staff leave. You tend to replace with newer staff, which adds within there. And again, within our negotiation cycle, we expect this to change slightly for 25-26 when we see numbers next year. As we look forward to 26-27, we start to analyze the projected revenues and expenditures. Revenue factors that we take into consideration include our student enrollment numbers, our state and local funding, especially with a focus on what categoricals we're expecting from the state for the coming year, as well as grants of what will be continuing from state and federal levels and the amounts that those are being projected at. Looking at expenditure factors, personnel costs continue to be the bulk of our budget, as we discussed earlier. That's the makeup of our staff, with investment and increased services to students and compensation correlate to increased expenses in this critical expenditure component. We will take into account the contractual agreements, retirement, staffing, et cetera, to make sure that we hone in on these dollar amounts as we look at the 26-27 year. These personnel costs are made up of our compensation, benefits, retirement, staffing levels. We do mark in here hiring experience versus new to the profession, as we are making sure that we are replacing our staff that is leaving. There is a cost differential between those that are coming in new to us versus those with experience. We used to see kind of that cost savings more with retirements and our new personnel coming in. However, with some areas such as special education, we're not seeing as many new to the profession anymore, and that cost savings is not as prevalent as it once was. The other approximate 15% of our budget is coming from our departmental budgets. These are items such as textbooks, professional development, teaching and office supplies, our purchase services, fees and licenses, technology, furniture and equipment, utilities, and fuel. We had meetings with all of our departments in March, and our analysis of their proposed departmental budgets continues. Looking at our state budget proposals, we're pretty lean with information this year. At this point, we only have the governor's budget in. Senate and House, we are hearing rumors of expectations of seeing something this week, but only time will tell of if those are actually released and what is fully in them. Some areas within here, within the governor's budget, is a 2.5% increase for foundation allowance, which would be an increase of around $250. Our 35M literacy support that we received this year is anticipated to increase next year. Universal free breakfast and lunch is being continued under her budget. However, we are seeing a reduction of our MPS funding, the retirement funding in categorical 147A, C, and E by a little over $93 million. The student membership count is still being based on our blended count that we are used to at this point. 31A is a little interesting in the governor's budget this coming year. The amount for it is being shown at a 6.1% increase. However, within her budget, it's rolled into a new section, 22B3, which is a weighted pupil membership. It includes section 31A, includes section 41 bilingual, and there's a complete mathematical formula to determine how districts would get funding. It's unclear at this time of what exactly that would mean to our district, as well as if that even makes it into the final budget, with depending on what the Senate and the House have. GSRP funding does see an increase from this year's $10,650 per pupil to $11,290 per pupil. Special education is maintained at 100% of foundation, and the base state foundation allowance would be increased to $10,300, up from $10,050 this year. Looking at our initial outlook for 26-27 for general fund revenues, we are projecting a 41 student enrollment decline, which is based on that average student loss that we've seen the past several years, which equates to a loss of around $410,000 worth of revenue. At this point, we are budgeting at a $200 increase in foundation allowance. The governor did have it at $250. However, historically, her budget tends to be kind of on the rosier side, and foundation allowance increases normally don't come in quite at what she has. So bringing that down a little bit until more information comes to light. That is projected at bringing us in a little bit over $1.4 million in increase. And as far as categoricals, right now it's still very up in the air. We're looking at around $500,000 addition, which is a conservative approach, which we will modify as we know more information. Altogether, this is looking at a little over $1.54 million of additional revenue within our budget. Looking at our initial outlook for expenditures next year, without staffing being completed as far as hiring, retirements, and everything that goes into that, we make our best guesses at incurred costs from salary increases, steps, and lane changes, and et cetera. In addition, we don't know what the actual medical cost increases will be. Last year, as you might remember, we were caught quite by surprise. I think we had budgeted at around 10% and they came in at 18%. We increased that to 12% this year to try to weather the storm a little bit better. Dental, vision, LTD, and life, we budgeted at a 5% increase. And within our departmental budget request, when we went and sat through all of our budget meetings and we tallied up all of the requests, we came in at $1.5 million worth of additional requests, which brings this total to a little shy of $8.5 million. Now, when we look at this, we know that it's showing that we need $1,165 per student from foundation allowance increases to make up for these projected expense increases, which based on our $200, we're showing a shortfall of $965.36. Knowing this, we're going back to our departments. We are sharpening our pencils, making sure that we are maintaining our financial, being as financially wise as we can be. Things that were identified right off the bat within there. One of our high schools requested $36,000 of new furniture, which is 2 classrooms worth. That's something that we know that we are going to have to push off a little bit further. Going through these departmental budgets, making sure that when we come back in June to the board, we've really analyzed our wants versus needs and making sure that we are being as conservative as we can while still meeting our increased needs that we have as a district. Variables within our budget are our most critical budget drivers. Student enrollment numbers, our state and local funding, medical cost, our variance from both our current budget as future, as well as federal funding. We'll continue to monitor these as we're building our 26-27 budget, but predictions will once again prove to be very difficult as we don't anticipate the ability to rely on any of the proposed budgets that we get out of Lansing. In the last few years, last-minute changes in the current political landscape. However, we'll continue to collaborate to bring to you our best guesses and amend as conditions change and facts become available. Looking ahead at our key budget dates, our second budget amendment for the 25-26 budget will come to you on June 15th. That's where we will have fine-tuned our revenues and expenditures, audited our student enrollment numbers for our Section 25 adjustments, and give you our best guess at the end of the 25-26 school year. We will also have board action at that point for the adoption of our 26-27 budget. As stated in the past, budget's consistently moving target, and we need to be sure to invest our resources wisely for current needs, but always with an eye on the future to sustain the programs and services that make MPS a special place to learn. We'll continue to work with the superintendent and the FFO committee as the process progresses and present our final budget amendment and initial budget to you all in June. Are there any questions?
Anna, I'm sorry. I missed the beginning of the presentation. So you may have already addressed this, but on slide 13, which is the State Bulletin 1014 Financial Ranking Index, general fund revenue per pupil, under local sources, what is included, or where do the funds for that $4,358 come from? Is that just tax revenue? Is that from, are there additional sources in there?
There are additional sources. It does include local property taxes, but also includes things like interest that we've gained on our accounts, athletic revenue, revenue that's come in from rental of any of our facilities, as well as any of the gifts and grants that we approve each board meeting would be reflected within that local sources.
So the booster funds would be included in that as well?
The booster funds that they donate
Yes.
to us, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Anna, from the top line, 24-25, we were at 35 million fund balance. We're projecting $7 million deficit spending in 25-26, hence the 28 million fund balance. Given this slide, historically, we've always come in better than we budget for.
Yes.
So of that 7 million, not that I'm going to hold you to it, what do you think we should plan at to come in at?
I don't know that I could give you an answer at this point that's going to
You
be
could be a good
for that.
politician. Yeah.
That's something that we are going through with our buildings over the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. We work with them to get their final budget adjustments in. So without seeing that, I don't think that I could give you a number that would hold any
Okay.
weight right now.
Okay, but I guess my takeaway, I guess, is we're projecting worst case scenario to be at 28 million fund balance, potentially down, and I think you're presenting us the worst case scenarios in both 25-26 and 26-27 of down 7 in each year, so net 20, wind up at 21.
I would agree. March tends to be the most conservative budget
Okay.
time. It's more of kind of your worst case scenario if we spent every dollar that we had budgeted within there. We know that isn't the case. We are a district that budgets conservatively to make sure that, we're not coming back to you and saying, hey, by the way, it's really going to be 9 million less. So yes, I would agree with your assessment. And to your point, when you look at our final adopted budget versus our final audited budget, that is always coming in slightly better than there.
Okay. And then if you go to my other question pertained to what we've seen out of the governor's office so far, specifically on the MPS's impact. The reduction of 91 million, would that still be a flow through for us? Or will that get handled off of what I would call our P&L?
So with that, within the 147A, 40C, 147C, and 147E, there's kind of differences within there. Some are coming into us as a cost offset from some are kind of more of a flow through.
Okay.
Though looking at this, the 93.1 million reduction, that will negatively impact us.
Because we will have to make up the deficit or
Yes.
the difference. Okay.
Yes.
And do we understand on a per pupil basis how much that is yet?
I have not divided that
Okay.
out by a per pupil basis at this point.
One of the things that I've just been investigating offline has been just how much, when we talk about our foundation allowance, I think it's easy for the public to just assume that $10,300 goes towards educating our students today and paying our staff that's on staff today. And I think a significant amount of that money is these legacy retirement costs. And it'd be helpful maybe in the future just to break that out so we understand how much is impacting our staff today versus our staff of yesterday as we continue to work through that.
Sure, I can make sure that we have that for future consideration for the board.
Not that we can do much about it individually as a district, but to inform our citizens. Any other questions or comments for Anna and the team? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving into item 4 is the consent agenda. Item 4.1 are approval of the minutes from the March 16th regular meeting. 4.2 are recommendations for hire as listed in your agenda packet. Item 4.3 are approval of the food service contract renewal for the 26-27 school year. Item 4.4 are resignations as listed in your board packet. Item 4.5 are financials, approval of the payment of the school system's bills for the month of February 2026 as listed in the check register prepared by Lori Holderby in the amount of $9,590,572. Distribution of obligations by fund is listed in the documentation. Item 4.6 are approval of legal payments as listed in your agenda packet. Do I have a motion to approve items 4.1 through 4.6?
So moved.
Motion by Horowitz, support by Lauterbach. Any further discussion or questions on 4.1 through 4.6? All in favor of approving items 4.1 through 4.6, say aye.
Aye.
Item 5.1, Shining Stars. Penny.
Whitney Jacobs, come on down. We have 3 shining stars tonight, and you'll notice a theme. They are our PYP coordinators. And you're going to see some common themes among these beautiful comments. You're going to stand right by me. Take this, and I'm going to say some things about you. All right, our first shining star is Whitney Jacobs. Whitney joined our team here at MPS in 2012 as a teacher at Carpenter. She then transitioned to Plymouth, then to Central Park, before becoming our PYP coordinator for Plymouth, Central Park, and the Carpenter Pre-Primary Center. Margaret needs a picture of you. Standing there with us. Sorry. Whitney has also served as student council advisor and taught summer school. All around great teammate for us. Whitney, you were nominated for a Shining Star by your colleagues, and here are some of the things they have to say about you. You do it all as a PYP coordinator at Central Park. You are weekly engaged in collaborative meetings with multiple grade levels. You support new staff in implementing the IB components. You help plan professional learning and so much more. You are doing this for all 3 buildings, which is incredibly noteworthy. Staff appreciate you because you are approachable, you're organized, you are funny, I do know this. You have a great sense of humor, and you have an overwhelming positive attitude. Such a wonderful asset for our student, staff, and district. Another colleague noted that you just always seem to find a way to support staff, whether it's getting books from the Grace A. Dow Library to supplement what's happening in classrooms, following up on field trips that are really awesome for our students, helping to create presentations that support curriculum, whatever it is, you are there to make sure that students and staff feel supported. And you frequently volunteer your time and support our MyKIP teams, which are continuous improvement teams, in multiple buildings, ensuring that everything continues to run as necessary and that we're meeting our goals. In addition, you go above and beyond when it came to our most recent PYP authorization visit. That's a lot of work to put these materials together. Jen Ringgold was our board rep for those and knows firsthand the work that goes into that. And Whitney, you were instrumental in ensuring that our schools were ready for that. And similarly, you go above and beyond when it comes time for fifth grade exhibition, which is a joyful celebration and culmination of the PYP experience. And I know we all light up, but especially you, when we get to see students in those projects. Whitney, you continually demonstrate exceptional leadership, dedication, and service to Midland Public Schools as our PYP coordinator. We are incredibly thankful for you. Congratulations on being a shining star. And you're welcome to go say hello to the board and take their hand. Our next shining star is Christina Tignanelli. Congratulations. Thanks for being here. All right, you're going to stand by me also while I say all these awesome things about you and to you. Okay, so our second PYP coordinator. Christina joined our team in 2018 as a third grade teacher at Chestnut Hill, then transitioned to the PYP coordinator role at Adams and Siebert, which is the position she currently holds. Also has served as safety patrol and student council advisor. Also nominated by many colleagues. Here are some wonderful things. As our PYP coordinator, you are skillful at balancing the demands of these multiple buildings that you serve. And again, you have remarkable flexibility, organization, grace. You are always meaningfully engaged and present and responsive in whatever setting you're in. And it is not easy to balance those competing needs with all of the schools that you're in. You foster a culture of collaboration, professional growth, and continuous improvement. You help build this shared vision for high-quality PYP implementation and instruction, and your leadership has been instrumental in preparing for our IB visits. Another colleague says that you are a strong advocate for students. You help teachers ensure that learning experiences are engaging, inclusive, and aligned to the values of PYP, which I know you hold dearly. You build a positive environment and relationships with students and staff, and again, create this environment where everyone feels valued and supported. And this person also recognizes you for the fact that you are detail-oriented and very organized and committed to excellence in everything that you do. You have passion for teaching and learning, and it's evident as you support teachers and students. And finally, you are a true team player. You consistently meet student and teachers where they are, helping them recognize and reach their full potential. You're caring, reflective, and a knowledgeable educator, and we are incredibly fortunate to have you on our team. Congratulations on being a shining star. All right, let's say hello to the Lord. We have a third PYP coordinator who isn't here with us this evening because she is home taking care of her 2 new babies. But we are just as excited to honor Jillian Welter, and Jen's service is here, and we'll make sure that she gets her certificate and her award. Jillian joined our team in 2014 as a 5th grade teacher at East Lawn Elementary and then transitioned to Central Park before becoming the PYP coordinator for Chestnut Hill and Woodcrest, which is her current position. She also has served as a student council advisor and taught summer school. There is something about student council, I guess, that it's a common theme. Also nominated by her colleagues, here are some great things about Jillian. She has a deep commitment as a PYP coordinator to doing what's best for students, and that is combined with absolute positivity, expertise, and a tireless work ethic that makes her an amazing team player. She has made a lasting impact on our school communities. Her leadership has been instrumental in preparing for our most recent IB visits. She's been collaborative, she coaches, she provides this ongoing support that empowers both new and experienced teachers to design meaningful inquiry-based experiences that reflect the core principles of IB. She really promotes student agency, transdisciplinary learning, and the development of the learner profile. Jillian is incredibly dedicated, again, serving 2 buildings, and she goes above and beyond to ensure that the staff and students and families in both of those schools receive the kind of support they need with kindness, professionalism, and a genuine love for education. Her passion, care, and commitment shine in everything she does every single day. We are incredibly thankful for Jillian's service to Midland Public Schools as well. Congratulations, Jillian. So I'll just throw in, we've highlighted these three as a trio. It's hard to separate them. They themselves are such a collaborative team and have worked incredibly hard along with our building principals, several of whom are here tonight, to make sure that we have had a successful experience these last couple of months through our PYP visits. And we've received some really great feedback about how exceptional those programs are for our students and some opportunities where we can strengthen. And I just love the team's attitude about embracing that feedback to really continue doing what's best for students. Although she declined her opportunity to be a shining star, I do just want to give a quick shout out to Jen Service, who's standing in the back. Jen, as our elementary curriculum specialist, is really the glue that holds that team together and has worked just as hard as they have behind the scenes to make sure that our documentation has been on point, that our principals have felt well supported, and that those three coordinators have. Just really proud of the team effort here, so thank you to everyone, and thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Penny. And congratulations to Whitney, Christina, and Jillian on being a shining star. If anybody was here to honor those three and want to leave, go ahead. You don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we will move on to item 5.2, Spotlight on Excellence with Central Parks Principal Chelsea Sauve.
Good evening. Thank you for welcoming one of Central Park Elementary's outstanding Odyssey of the Mind teams this evening. I'll give you a brief overview of Odyssey and then I'll pass it along to our amazing students. Odyssey of the Mind is an international program where students work in teams for months to solve creative, open-ended problems and complete a spontaneous challenge at competition. Since September, our students, along with amazing parent volunteer coaches, have been writing scripts, designing sets and costumes, programming vehicles and robots, building structures that can hold hundreds of pounds, and so much more. Through this work, they are developing creativity, teamwork, and problem-solving skills. The students progress through different levels of competition, including regionals and states, and we're proud to share that 3 of Central Park Elementary's teams have qualified for Worlds. This will take place at Iowa State University this May. Our teams have also been fundraising for the trip, raising over $500 at our recent school carnival, which explains the fake tattoos I have on my arms tonight. I'd also like to recognize our 3rd grade teacher, Miss Reel, who has been a tremendous champion and supporter of our Odyssey of the Mind students and families. Now, the best way to understand this program is to see it in action. Tonight, one of our world qualifying teams is here to perform. The team is coached by Sean Pinco, Jared Hoops, and Ray Shu, and includes 2nd grader Mia Hoops, 4th graders Bo Ray Ko, Arthur Green and Max Hoops, and 5th graders Vivon Suni, Mark Shu, and Luke Miller. Team, are you ready? Come on in.
get started, make sure to smash that subscribe button down below to make sure to and any of our future adventures. All right, let's get the ship a sailing. Delivery for Captain Selfie here. Hey, last week these two barnacles kind of each other. I decided we need to know. I ordered the latest technology, Treasure Tracker Advanced. According to the ad, about 6 to 7 more times advanced than one version. Did you order another darn gizmo off of Amazon? You need to not put it on every blasted ad you see online. Well, for your information, Captain Swaggy Can, I only had enough treasure from my last one to order a used CTA off of eBay.
Here we go again. I hope this is better than the treasure map /peg like you ordered last week off of FedEx Marks the Spot. That thing's impossible to decipher. Plus, everyone knows the Earth is flat.
Darn, mateys, we're after the greatest treasure in the world. With this gizmo, I know it's just around the corner. Gold, jewels, glory. CTA, where's the treasure hiding?
My name is TTA. You brought me cheap off of eBay. I will show you where to the treasure where it is. Searching for treasure. Recalculating X marks the spot from Seashell Island.
The Seychelles, you say? That place is famous for pirate treasures. Based on this map, looks like we should be going left. X marks the spot.
Right.
Oh, look, Tiki is flailing. He must be excited.
I don't know about that.
Left it is. Full speed ahead. Good one. That's the city in the power of the ship. Slowly, very calls all systems go to the Seychelles. This ain't no treasure cave. It's a spa. Tiki and Whitney, where did you send them?
Arrived at destination X marks the spot. Seashell Island was fabulous days. While at destination, be sure to use referral code TTA to get 20% off any bill.
Wait, was that just an advertisement? Well, for your information, I only had enough treasure from my last bundle to order a used DTA off of eBay.
TTA, we said X marks the spot. SPOT, as in the spot to find the treasure. When is my and trust him. People like to be around Baba a lot more when he's calm and happy. That's why we built the spa in the first place, to bring happiness, joy, and peace.
You know, he could be right. Maybe we don't need gold and viewers to be happy. We should embrace the richness of our friendship. Bob, can we keep one shiny coal as a gold coin? Please, we're starving and we need to order something else. DoorDash. You need DoorDash. We're starving, man. Need more non-diesel.
TTA, you're still fired, though. Time!
Well, first of all, that was wonderful. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about how many times, maybe two questions. First, how long have you had this problem statement to work on?
A few months. Like
September?
3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months? Okay.
Yeah, 3 years.
And
Yeah, 5 months.
and obviously you've practiced it a couple times between September and now. So when was the first time that you performed? This time.
January.
Performance.
Late January.
So you had like 3.5, 4 months to work on that? It's pretty impressive. What do you like most about Odyssey of the Mind?
The technical part. the robot.
Well, probably, I always stayed school. University school. World fun.
I've only been there. I wasn't even in it that time.
So it's pretty neat that everybody finds something else different and exciting about the opportunity, huh? Very neat. So when do you work on this?
Every Wednesday and then sometimes
And every other Saturday.
every Saturday.
Sometimes on Saturday.
We start Saturday practices.
Wednesdays 4 to 5 and Saturdays
1 to 1.
So outside of school, that's a lot of dedication.
But we start Saturday practices later, like a few months in when we need to when we're actually to the designing part and not grades. And
Nice. So maybe my last question, and then I'll let some other people ask. What are you doing to recruit new members? You train them?
There's two parts of this. We just perform to your long-term problem. There's also our spontaneous problem where we answer questions that we get on the spot. So like we'd go to the competition, and then they like beforehand we wouldn't know the spontaneous problem. But then when we like go over there, they tell us like, here's your problem. You have to do blah blah blah.
And then sometimes there's hands-on, like you have a set of materials and restrictions, and you have to use those to like build the tallest tower or build the longest bridge that doesn't touch the floor or something like that. Or there's verbal ones where there's like they ask you a question and you have to and there's like many answers, but you have to find different answers. Like
Very
where
neat.
would you go for vacation? You can make up places, and then like they would judge you for the creativity of your answers and give you more points.
That's awesome. Very neat. Wow.
Can you talk us through the brainstorming that went into the solution for your long-term problem and what
So
that
at
looked like?
first we wanted like
Yeah,
pirates.
first we tried to like get an idea. So
And-
my idea was pirates, and his was like pixelated people.
Yeah.
So we did like pixelated pirates.
The first thing that came to our minds when we thought like pixelated pirates and like Minecraft. So that's where we got the costume idea from.
Nice.
So like this thing. Well,
That's not
it still kind of is.
And it's not
And then once we had our pixelated pirates idea, we had to, so first we had to look at the restrictions. So all our props have to fit into at most 2 suitcases. But bonus points if you have 1 suitcase. That's 62 linear
So when designing our costumes, we chose cardboard because it's naturally boxy and pixely. And then so first we had to make this mixture out of like wheat and water and glue. And then we had to paint them to make them more sturdy so that they don't bend and degrade. And then we painted them with prime to further stabilize them. And then we painted them and cut them.
So before we painted them for real, we put like grids on them.
Oh yeah, we drew grids on them so that like they're like each.
So it would be like pixely because like then you could just draw a 2-inch by 2-inch square. And then for the costumes, like Vivon said, we use cardboard. But we also use like used cardboard boxes. Like like stuff you find at Costco. We like just use boxes, and then we kind of just use like cardboard scissors. I don't know what they're called, but then we just
Cutters?
Cutter things. Yeah, cutter things. And then we gouged like holes and like
Very neat.
in them. And then after we had the costumes, we have like a big backdrop and like a big backdrop, and then we have like props. So for a backdrop, at first we had an idea of like stacking like foam plates.
That would be like too much and not be able to like fit in. And then we tried to fit them, but only 9 foam plates fit in 1 suitcase. So we were running very short. We couldn't do much with 9, and they would be hard to like rearrange, put together. They would be unstable in the wind. So I came up with the idea of trifold boards, and then the rest of the team added onto it and made it into like a different folding board.
So we kind
It's
of
still
just like
folded.
cut off the wings of the thing, and then now they're just like boards, like plain old boards.
And then they
So you know what I love hearing is that you guys worked on a bunch of engineering problems, bunch of math problems, and most of all, a bunch of teamwork and problem solving together, huh? It's pretty neat. Something to be proud of. So
I don't have a question, but it's so exciting. It's okay. It's so exciting to hear how excited you guys are about going through this process. I just want to shout out your coaches because this is a lot of energy that you put to very good purpose. You guys are awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and showing us. Nice job.
Good luck in May at They have all their.
Well, can you three top that? All right, so we're gonna move into item 5.3 and 5.4, facility planning update and workshop. Just as we've done in the past, provide a monthly update on where we're at in the facility planning process. Our team continues to meet with the three gentlemen up here each Wednesday night to work through optionality and brainstorm and problem solve, just as we saw here. And then we've also been hosting community engagement sessions to try and get not just survey responses, but actual input as well. We have more coming up in May, I believe, on or around May 7th, Penny, for those additional community input sessions. So I'll turn it over to the team here for next steps on facility planning workshop.
Cool, thanks. I think we're just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up. As a reminder, Stephen Gunther with GMB. With me tonight, we have
Paul Barbeau on the Community Advisory Committee. And Kenny Babinski with Clark Construction.
So as we get started, one of the things we've been talking about in our community engagement sessions is really using this iconic landmark of Midland as the Tridge, is really trying to pull these pieces together. One side is the greater Midland community and hearing from them and that input via community engagement sessions. There's the steering team, which is working on their tasks, and then there is the Board of Education and administration, and using all three of those groups to come together with a comprehensive plan moving forward. So just as a little bit of history here, all of the buildings that are currently used for school facilities were built pretty much between 1950 and 1970, with the exception of Carpenter being in 1926 and Central Park in 2017. One of the interesting things when you look at that total timeline is 9 school buildings were built in 20 years. That was a huge amount of community support, whether it be through the selling of bonds or fundraising or any of those different mechanisms used to build those buildings. So much community support given at that one time. And trying to find ways to garner that same amount of community support today, which isn't uncommon in Midland's community as a whole. I mean, you can look at any recent event where people come together and they're there for their neighbors, and even how much Neighboring Week has continued to grow within Midland itself. We're always coming there together to help one another. And I think that's a great way to think about this, and when we approach the schools in general, coming together to support the schools as the community always has. So as we pull together those different legs of the bridge, we're here to kind of just talk to you about what the steering committee is discussing, what they're learning about in there to help make their decisions, but also kind of let you know and anybody who's not at the community engagement sessions, some of the things that we're hearing from that group. So out of our last engagement session we had last week, these are some of the big things that people talked about and they've shared in their feedback with us. One of them being that the understanding that there is a community shift here. While we can look at that 6+ years ago, the community was different then, but it's just finding ways of moving forward, because we have to understand, and as different community members expressed in those sessions, schools are key to the economic health. As we look to bring in new businesses to Midland and the business community is looking to that, one of their first questions is, well, what are the schools like? And so for that continued growth, there is so much importance on the public school system within the community. One of the, I think, great things that have come out of this that they, interesting feedback that they've had is they like to see the creative problem solving. Just like, I mean, we can't do an animated play with our creative problem solving. We could. I think if you ask the steering team all to answer one question, you may get a similar response at the end, just like that. But excited about, creative problem solving and some of the stuff that the team is working on. And I think, what feeds into like what was just, seen up here today is that risk and call to action and facilities as an enabler, and really how can facilities be seen as a way to enable student outcomes more than just the infrastructure around them. And then also realizing there is a risk of doing nothing, like you just are continuously pushing a problem down the road, and how do you manage that going forward? So those are all the things that the community shared in their input in trying to find the right solution in what they've seen. So Paul is here to represent the steering team that's working on this, the Blueprint for Tomorrow team.
Thanks, Stephen, and thank you for the opportunity to help present tonight. And the team, I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere around 30 active participants, a diverse group of age diversity, geographic diversity within the district, parents, retirees, teachers, staff. So we're trying to bring kind of diverse perspectives to the challenges. And to be honest, I wish we could broaden the audience, and we have to find a way to broaden the audience to the entire community, because I've had some and do have some opinions about paths forward, and we all do. But I've learned so much just in a couple of months of our work, and the things that I've learned probably won't come as a surprise to the board or MPS staff, but I think they're important for the community to help understand. And I think maybe one of the biggest roles of our group moving forward is to try to help engage the community and convey that this is both really exciting. If you think about the slide that Stephen showed about a block of school investment in the 50s and 60s, this is our chance to do something and shape the next 50 years. So to me, that's really, really exciting. But it's also really, really hard. And this slide kind of captures that. The things that we're talking about, and I won't read through every box, but obviously current condition of facilities. What's the future of education look like? How are our buildings optimized? We've learned about qualified versus non-qualified bonds. How is education changing? What is the community thinking about this? Obviously, ultimately, what would the community support? How do we think about short-term versus long-term, or a phased approach to some of these challenges? So many different factors to balance, and so it's really hard to kind of get it all in balance, I would say. The needs are clearly immediate. There's so many options, and you'll get a sense of some of that tonight. I don't think inaction is one of those options. There has to be a plan forward here. And then I would add to all of these kind of practical factors just the external environment. I don't think it's a secret that generally trust in institutions is lower probably than it was in the 50s and 60s. We're going through radical technology transformation. There's affordability concerns certainly that are real in the community. There's local and national economic anxiety, and those are all at play in our discussions. And the other thing that's hard is building consensus. So when I think of consensus, I don't think that means everybody agrees on every aspect of a plan, but that a group of well-intentioned, thoughtful people engaged, came together, considered options, learned, and built a plan that really moves the district and the community forward. So that's what we're trying to do. But it is hard. It's hard to build consensus among a board of 7. It's a bit harder to build consensus among an advisory committee of 30, and it's exponentially harder to build consensus among a community of tens of thousands. But that's the goal, is to build that consensus and drive a plan that moves forward. As we do that too, I think there's a risk of trying to address every concern in a little bit of a way, and you sprinkle a little bit of solution on every concern, and then you end up with something that doesn't really adequately solve issues or move things forward. So listening and engaging and building consensus is important, but it's really important that the solution is meaningful in some way. So it's exciting and hard at the same time, and we got to convey that to the community, I think, as we continue this work. My other big observation is I think there's an ideal state that we would all like of three things: high quality buildings and programming. See the footprint of the schools and the buildings kind of exist as it does today, and keep the millage rates, at or near their current levels. And I would argue that we can only have, in any scenario, two of those three. If we want high quality buildings and programming and the current building footprint, we're gonna have to pay more for that. Conversely, if we say we want to keep the building roster and the building inventory the same as is today and keep the millage rates around where they are today, well, then we're not going to have high quality buildings and programming. So you can take any two of those three, but it's really hard to achieve all three. And we got to think about how to do that and which is the one that we want to trade off in a reasonable, responsible fashion. In my mind, high quality buildings and programming is the one that we need to focus on. And then the variables are the rates and how we think about optimizing a building footprint as we reinvest in it. So those are some of my takeaways from the first couple months of the work, and we're excited to keep moving it forward. This next slide, we worked as a group to identify guiding values as we look at design and options, and we've really engaged with the team to do that. What values are going to just guide how we as a group think about those trade-offs? And these are the top 5 that rose to the top. A lot of discussion and prioritization around CTE, future-ready student experiences. We know that education will change much more rapidly than the life of these buildings, so the buildings need to be have ability to adapt over time. Safety, security, well-being is always paramount. Equity, and by equity we mean equal opportunities no matter what building a student sits in. And I don't think we necessarily have that today. So can our plan move us further down to equity? And I would say equity also for the staff that work and the teachers that work in buildings, because that's not consistent either. And I don't think there's any doubt that a quality environment, physical environment for students and teachers will produce better outcomes. So how do we think about equity across buildings? And then the last two is where we kind of landed as our top 2 priorities for guiding values, which is phased, responsible facility planning and transparent stewardship and clear communication out to our community. And in my mind, too, if we can achieve those 2, that, in my mind, encompasses the other 3 priorities to the left of those 2. So that's the lens through which we're evaluating different scenarios and models that we're considering.
Now we'll start getting into some of the stuff we've shared, community engagement, but also with the steering team. All of that, those little bubbles, right, that are trying to create a scale of how do you make this balanced decision, and all of these factors that go into, finding that right path forward. So just as a reference, we can take a look at the total mills that are levied for facilities as a whole, just in Midland County. So if we do our history lesson on Proposal A in the 90s and how that changed how funding was put together for schools, in the state of Michigan, facility planning is really set up through bonds and sinking funds. And all of those are voted on millage initiative for the district to use for those specific items. Because as we talked about, 80% of what comes in from the foundation allowance is going towards teaching and education of those students. Using, very little is there to really focus on the facilities. So if we look at Midland County as a whole, Midland Public Schools right now is 2.5 mills. But if we look to our neighbors at Bullock Creek, Meridian, even St. Louis, 7 mills is being levied in those communities and voted upon by those communities to support their school facilities. And when you look at it from a student count perspective, Midland Public Schools is so much larger than those other districts that are neighboring us, and just seeing the difference between those millage rates. And one thing I will point out, and we'll get to it in a little bit on kind of what does a mill mean for me, but no matter what community you live in here, a mill is a mill is a mill. If I move my house from Midland to Meridian, my taxable value is the same, I'm still investing that mill towards that school district. I think, you can live right on that border between Meridian and Midland. You go across the street and it's a 7 mil towards infrastructure for those schools. When we start, zooming out, kind of outside of Midland County as a whole, and just looking at a couple groups here that whether it's athletics, which are in dark green, or curriculum of what the district strives to be in dark blue, all of these communities around us, on average, their communities have invested a significant amount more into their facilities, whether it's through bonds and sinking funds, than where Midland currently is at right now. So you can see, for example, Traverse City is 3.1, but you get to Davison and Grand Blanc, they're 5 and 6.3 mils. And realistically, the closest, even in student count, is Grand Blanc, which is still less than the number of students that are in Midland Public Schools. We look at the curriculum side. You can see communities of Troy and Northville and Okemos and Byron Center, all a significant investment into their school facilities. When we break it down, another lens here to take a look at it is everything in blue here is a bond initiative within the last 10 years. Everything in green is a current sinking fund. So each community balances it a little bit different. You can look at Bullock Creek, Meridian, St. Louis. They're all bonds. 7 mills in the past 10 years of bonds. But we can look to Freeland, is another close district to us here. They're almost 3 mills, but they're just dedicated to sinking funds. There's no right or wrong answer in how you make that balance, but it's all creating that facility plan moving forward, and how you use those funds to address the right needs that they can be spent on. And we can compare, millage to millage to millage. Ultimately, it comes down to what does the steering team, what does the community want Midland Public Schools to be? So, if we look at, what does a mill mean for me? Average home value in the area, $240,000, so taxable value of $120,000. The easiest way that I've learned or heard to describe a mill is remove everything after the comma in your taxable value. That's 1 mil for 1 year. So 1 mil per year, average house, $120. 1 mil per month, $10. 1 mil a day is 33 cents. And if you think the student impact that can be had across a district for 33 cents a day can touch so many students' lives and create such a brighter future for those students. But we can also look at tangible items that we use every single day. Less than 1 taco at Taco Bell. I'm not a Taco Bell person, but I used to like Taco Supremes, and it's not even a Taco Supreme. Or 1.5 K-Cup pods that people use every single day and dispose of. A can of soup, it's really less than a small coffee at McDonald's. All of these things are $1.50 consumables that we use every single day and don't even pay attention to it. The impact that you can have with $1.50 a day to the students of this community is huge. So it's all putting it into perspective.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to get to it, but do you have a comparison of the average home value in other districts that you compared us to?
I don't have the average home value. I do have an estimate in not built into this slide deck here. I can get the total taxable value for the other districts for you, yes.
I think that'd be an interesting.
Yep. So one of the tasks that the steering team was tasked with, particularly this last week, was taking a look at qualified and non-qualified bonds. And if we go, down the route of having a bond, which is as their representation of the community, they feel is the best way forward for this district. So we can do just a quick summary of the differences between the two. Qualified bonds, you have access to the state's credit rating. So for example, a 0.2% lower interest rate on a $165 million bond could save $4.7 million. However, you could also mitigate that risk with bond insurance. And bond insurance for that same amount to get you to that same credit rating is $500,000. A qualified bond requires PQAP development and then Department of Treasury oversight. And one of the key differences between the two is the prevailing wage requirement in the qualified bond. From a non-qualified bond approach, that prevailing wage has a huge impact on the amount that you can actually then use to do additional projects. So working with Clark on trying to estimate what that is, conservatively, it's about a 10% savings on labor costs. So on a $165 million bond, when you look at how the percentages all break down, it's $13.2 million that you could then spend on additional projects so you can broaden your impact to more students. What that 10% savings doesn't account for is the increased contractor competition. So you could have more companies putting in bids to do the work, which can keep that bidding really competitive. And in a non-qualified bond, the district itself can develop its own PQAP to allow for that project tracking and accountability. And then just for reference, in 2025, when you look at a dollar standpoint, 84% of non-qualified bonds passed and 50% of qualified bonds passed. So I'll pass it over to Paul, who was part of this conversation.
This is one thing the group has consensus on, I would say, and generally would recommend, I think, as we come forward with a non-qualified path. It seems pretty clear-cut just in terms of maximizing dollars.
Stephen, this might be a question for Anna and our team over there, but in our normal course of business, do we have to use the prevailing wage and qualified contractors for schoolwork?
I can take that one. Yes, for construction, alteration, or repairs that are above the competitive bidding threshold that are funded in whole or in part by the state, which would include anything that we're using general fund for, we are subject to the prevailing wage requirements.
Okay.
That does not apply to our bond dollars right now, as any bonds that were approved by voters before February 13th, 2024 are excluded from that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I have a question about, so prevailing wage requirements, can you describe generally, are there real numbers attached to that? Is it different for different types of, labor that can you give some context about what prevailing wage requirement means?
Yeah, what Kenny probably touched on it the most. There are set prevailing wage numbers that contractors have to follow if you're following the prevailing wage amount. We, in projects, seen it from 2 to 17% difference in how much that labor cost actually accounts for in that savings. And so looking at kind of that middle round, conservative 10%, that's the labor cost savings due to going a non-prevailing wage route. Just opens up more places that can bid on the work and then helps drive that competition as well.
Maybe to put that in context, there's a governmental authority somewhere that says this is what the prevailing wage is. Where do they get that? How do they determine what is prevailing?
Sorry, I don't have a great answer. I believe it's state of Michigan set items, but I don't know the exact source of that.
We don't have any control over it. Somebody
Right.
says, if you're gonna build this, you're subject to the Prevailing Wage Act, and they're gonna tell us what the prevailing wage is, regardless of what Brad Blasey might pay an electrician, for example. The government's gonna say, this is what you have to pay. Okay. Thank you.
So the biggest gain from the district's perspective in the use of taxpayer dollars is increasing competition over the jobs that are bid. And the general manager or the GC for the bond would still assess whether or not the contractor themselves is qualified to do the work in a professional manner, correct?
Correct.
Had all the safety training, they have, good. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we're understanding that.
Just a comment, Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, but the general contractor would potentially be bidding sub work to anyone that's interested in bidding on that, some of whom might pay prevailing wage, some of whom may not. And the prevailing wage payers may win some of that business.
Yep.
Because their overall expertise, bid efficiency is lower. So I think there would be in non-qualified a blend of prevailing wage payers and not, but it wouldn't require that every contractor on the job is paying prevailing wage.
Absolutely right. So we can continue answering questions, but one of the additional items that the non-qualified bond route affords is, so this is our timeline that we've put together thus far, which puts us at April 20th with the intent of finishing all of this stuff up by the end of May. That is to meet the Treasury oversight requirements of meeting with Department of Treasury by mid-June and having everything sent to the Department of Treasury like a week basically prior to that point. So what we can do in going the non-qualified route is the resolution for an election of ballot language is still sent on August 17th. And so we can use this extended time through May to really have continued community engagement and continue to refine this plan. As Paul mentioned, these decisions are hard. They have a 50-year impact on what is moving forward. And so allowing, there's the dollar side of it, but there's also the practical side of, really using this time and being conscious of this time and getting the community support and community engagement during this planning.
My initial reaction, kind of putting these two slides together, is to go with the recommendation that Paul has put forward. I think it's the most fiscally responsible plan for our taxpayers, and I think community engagement is paramount. And as Paul so eloquently put, when you're trying to balance this optimum of three different kind of competing priorities, that conversation takes a long time. And with the extra month or potentially longer if we need it, that's a lot of valuable time.
I think what resonates with me the most is just the potential of getting more bang for our buck with the unqualified bond and potentially going for a smaller bond because we will get more bang for our buck.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, can you clarify, if we were to go through the state with qualified bonds, we have to have a plan in place in 1 month. If we choose to go with non-qualified, we have at least until June, potentially June, to keep figuring out what the numbers are, what the millages are, what people would buy into. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Even longer. I mean, it's really then up to, August 17th is the resolution of, that's when it's sent. So it would just be the voting on that resolution going to the county prior to that point.
Oh, wow. All right.
if I might just interject, I think this is a point where just hearing from all of you to get a sense that we, to use the steering team's word, that we're at a point of consensus of our path forward. As you can see, it changes sort of our timeline then with the steering team and some of the ways that we hope to engage with the community. So are there other considerations, other thoughts?
Just as an aside, I don't fully understand why our debt rate would be higher, because like functionally and practically, you're still just collecting the dollars from the same citizens regardless of whose backstop it is. So I guess that 0.2%, I'd be interested in learning more offline as to why it would be any different, but
You're going back to the qualified?
Yeah.
It would be the difference in the borrowing costs and the interest
Right.
paid. Because your rating for borrowing of that credit may be different than the state's.
Okay.
And so if the state is slightly higher.
Because last I checked, the state's not running a 30% fund balance.
Right.
I think it's just concentration of risk too, right?
Okay.
So if a lender is lending
Yeah.
to Midland Public Schools, that risk is concentrated right here. If a lender is lending to the state, that risk is across the 10 million citizens of the state. So.
Okay.
I'm on board with the committee's recommendation.
Anybody else have any concerns or support?
No, I agree also that cost is a big factor for our next step. So I agree with how you all have assessed.
And it's important input to the plan as we think about, all right, here's some options and what are those option costs? What does that translate into a millage rate? And how do we make those trade-offs, and knowing that we're doing that work. You can always change your minds, right? Or we can reverse course, but doing that work with the idea of non-qualified bonds just puts a little bit of a guardrail on the work and helps us take next steps.
Yep.
Okay. So we can get a lens into another one of those little bubbles that the group is working on to help make their decision. And one of the big aspects of that is building utilization. And what does that mean? How is it calculated? And how does that affect any plan that's moving forward? So if you look at a scale of building utilization, you can, 70 to 80%, typically underutilized space, all the way to 100 plus, overcapacity, overcrowding of those buildings, everything like that. Typically, the target and the healthy operating range for a building is about 85%. It's kind of considered the ideal planning target. You're not held to that specific metric, but it's that ideal spot. It allows for growth, it allows for programming, it allows for kind of that equitable access to programs across, an entire district of schools, depending on how many there are. It's not just a made-up number. Association of Learning Environments uses it. State-level school construction authorities use it. Just across the industry, planning and architect, it is a standard for the industry on what that target is really looking to be. So utilization is down to its mathematical equation, enrollment over the number of teaching stations times students per station. The number of students per station will vary depending on the metric that you're looking at. We can look at it from a building code standpoint, and they're looking at egress routes and all of that and maximum occupancies. 35 kids isn't a realistic, way above anything we would really want. There's the Michigan PQAP, which follows a metric of, different number of students depending on the number of grade level, depending on the grade level. That is, from a qualified bond only approach. And there's the practical programmatic side of it when you're programming for a building and keeping an average of 25 students per classroom. each one of those tells a different story, and it's finding the right balance of those utilizations. So when we look at the schools across the district, the teacher station count will vary depending on the level of instruction that is being provided. So if we look at an elementary building, spaces that are designated for art and music and STEM, all of those do not count in your teaching station count. They are excluded from that. In addition, spaces that are designated for the ESA and spaces that are used for CI and special education excluded. When we get to the 6th through 12th grade levels of grades, those art, music, makerspace, gyms, all of those count now as an active teaching station. The exception being CI, special education, ESA are still excluded from that total count. So if you look at this chart, you can look at, Siebert, almost 400 students, Woodcrest, almost 600 students. They both, if you were to just count the number of boxes on a plan, 27, what some would consider a classroom. However, Plymouth is with their student count and their utilization, able to, have an art, a music, a makerspace, a foreign language classroom, a collaboration classroom, plus CI, special education spaces, and ESA spaces. So their actual, teacher count used in any of these metrics is 18. Woodcrest, one art, one music, and the rest of it. So it tells from that equitable lens, there's, while 27 count the boxes on a piece of paper, the teaching station count is different. So how does that look for the current utilization given current enrollment within the district? Everything in blue is if you utilize the Michigan PQ app. Everything in orange is current using that programmatic 25 students per classroom. I think the story what you can see from these is you can see high utilization at elementary level, and then there's buildings that are, underutilized. And so from a plan moving forward, how do you maximize the utilization within those buildings that are currently underutilized? So this is current, using the 5-year projection from those counts. You can see the story is, still consistent, but, something needs to happen in this grand scheme when you look at the 5-year projections, whether you're using Michigan PQ app or using a 25 student, count from programmatic level. Elementary utilization is high, and there's utilization that can be captured, say, at Midland High School. So that's one of the things that the steering team has been provided the information on to help guide their decision moving forward. The next thing that they've also...
Stephen, isn't, going back 2 slides, isn't the other way to look at this that, go one more, sorry. The maker spaces were built at Siebert and Woodcrest, but we can't use them because we have too many students. So isn't the other way to look at this that you actually are way overutilized if you actually put those counts back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we've muted how far over capacity some of those buildings are.
Right.
Right.
Yes, the metric would completely change in those ones if you follow the, what Plymouth is able to do with their buildings, and you went, all the way down. You would have Plymouth, Woodcrest and Plymouth being the same total number of boxes on a piece of paper. One would, 400 students at one in 18 classrooms, and almost 600 in 18. That's way, way overutilized if you were able to afford the same designation of classes in both schools. So the other thing that the steering team has gotten insight in to help, again, make this decision moving forward, because it is such an impactful decision, is looking at school of choice and what that means for the district. And so I'll pass it over to Anna, who gave a great presentation to the steering team this week.
All right, so when we're looking at school of choice, we tend to be looking at two different things within here: resident school of choice and non-resident school of choice. So resident school of choice is our resident students who are attending an MPS building other than their assigned school of residence. There's no financial impact with these students. It's the money stays within Midland Public Schools, but it's just essentially kind of moving from one building's roster to another. Our non-resident school of choice is either students that are coming into MPS from other districts, and once they are accepted as an MPS student, they are ours through graduation, or it could be students leaving MPS to attend other districts. This does have a financial impact. Students are bringing or losing that $10,018 per FTE we currently have as a foundational allowance. Looking at resident school of choice by the numbers, we have this broken down here for you by building of what we have as our in-district transfers. So Adams has 86, Central Park has 126, 64 of those are due to our ALPS program, the Advanced Learning Program for students there. Chestnut Hill 97, Plymouth 93, Siebert 76, Woodcrest 67. Please keep in mind those in-district transfers are across 6 grade levels when you're at an elementary school. Jefferson has 165, Northeast has 190, Dow High 114, Midland High 208. We get asked kind of the question, what happens if we send everybody back to where they're assigned to? You can see for the middle schools and high schools, you're essentially at a just swap right there. Looking at the elementary schools, though, we have this chart kind of showing what the numbers are with resident school of choice, what it would look like without resident school of choice if we sent everyone back to where they would be identified as their school of residence. Adams loses 15, Central Park gains 23, Chestnut Hill loses 47, Plymouth loses 14, Siebert gains 1, Woodcrest gains 15. Again, remember this is across 6 grade levels at these elementary schools. Looking at our non-resident school of choice, facts and drivers, again, once we accept a non-resident school of choice student, they're officially ours until high school graduation. We maintain a commitment to the continuity of their education, and we legally cannot send them back to their resident district. We would like to just keep you educated on the fact that there is a legislative movement right now to expand school of choice. Michigan House Bill 5310 is proposing legislation to require all schools to be open to school of choice. We've done some research into why families choose Midland Public Schools. Top reasons from applications include specialized programs, such as access to unique offerings like ALPS at Central Park, programs such as welding and auto tech, as well as our band and orchestra programs. Work and daycare proximity. Parents working in Midland need nearby childcare and schooling, which also includes MPS employees. Siblings, they already have a student here. They want to maintain family unity within a single school district and bring new students in as they're entering into kindergarten. Stability after moving, consistency for students whose family have moved out of district but wish to continue schooling at MPS. Maybe they've been with us from kindergarten until 10th grade. They moved their 11th grade year. They want to stay here for their senior year. And safety and better fit, seeking specific building cultures or environments that support students' well-being. Looking at our trend data across the past several years, your blue line that you see is the number of resident students enrolled elsewhere. So those are students that live within Midland Public Schools boundaries but are choosing to go to a school that is not Midland Public Schools. That could be a private school, that could be another public school district, just not staying here within MPS. That orange line is our number of non-resident students that we have enrolled. You can see we started to close the gap a little bit there in 1920, but with 2021 and especially prevalence of online schooling, we've started to see that kind of gap widen. Looking at our non-resident school of choice trend data by building, we have this broken down. 105 is a Midland County resident, but they do not live within the MPS boundaries. 105C is any student living outside of Midland County. Showing the total non-resident school of choice per building, as well as the total enrollment within that building. and all the way to the right, the percent non-resident school of choice by building. So looking through, Adams, we have 22, Carpenter 4. As you can see down, again, remember that this is across all grade levels within a building. When we look at an average of all of our buildings, we have about a 7.2% average of non-resident school of choice students within our district.
Hey, Anna, how good is our data on discerning if a student has two households that they're living in? They go to mom's and then dad's every other week. One parent lives in district, one doesn't. Is our data good enough that we understand those types of situations and how we would classify them as a student either in district or not? Same with resident school of choice.
Our enrollment specialist should be able to kind of mock through anything. My gut feeling on some of that would be it's dependent on the registering parent in that case.
Okay.
But we should be able to look through what that would look like.
Okay.
So there is a misconception that if we stop taking out-of-district students, we save money and therefore space if we closed our non-resident school of choice. The building reality here, as we talked about, the non-resident school of choice is around 7% of enrollment. Again, that's spread across grade levels. It helps to optimize capacity within our buildings and helps to maintain specialized programs as well as other programs within our district. Financial reality of this, we had 538.28 FTE of school of choice that came into MPS, which equates to almost $5.4 million of revenue coming in. But we had 1,000.05 FTE school of choice leaving MPS. So those MPS resident students that chose to go elsewhere, which is a loss of a little over $10 million. Combined together, that's a net loss of $4.6 million. If we did not have those non-resident school of choice students coming in, that's a loss of just $10 million right there. Looking at what that almost $5.4 million equals, that revenue that non-resident school of choice students are bringing in, it's the equivalent of roughly 46 teachers or 174 of our 210 paraprofessionals. It's the equivalent of Chestnut Hill's total operating budget or the entire transportation budget, equivalent of 33 new school buses or 8,697 staff laptops. As we've reminded throughout here, most of these school of choice students are distributed across grade levels. So removing 2 to 3 students from a classroom really doesn't allow the district to reduce staffing or stop heating the building or anything of that nature. It's only really removing that $30,000 in revenue that those 3 students would have provided us. So looking at some key takeaways here for resident school of choice, it's strategic flexibility. It's allowing families to choose the building that best fits their unique needs. Non-resident school of choice is vital revenue for us. It's providing over $5 million that sustains our current programming. And it's a level of sustainability for our operational excellence. School of choice optimizes capacity to sustain specialized programs where every learner is challenged, supported, and inspired to reach their full potential. Maintaining enrollment through school of choice programs is essential to the long-term health and stability of the district, securing the resources to fulfill our mission and vision.
So the steering team has been giving a lot of information. Like they have been well educated on all of these different items to help make this decision moving forward. And so I'll let Paul kind of touch on how do we make sense of it all and what are some of the things that team is considering.
Yeah, I don't think we have made sense of it all just yet. And I'd say every session is a bit of learning, right, about school of choice, about qualified, non-qualified, about how the budgets work, about sinking fund versus millages. It's a little bit about thinking about how can we engage the community, either in our own circles or in a broader effort to communicate all of this in an effective way. And then ultimately thinking about deliberating on how do we put the pieces together and create options that we react to. And the team has been great at being able to quantify those options and say, okay, if you put these pieces together in this way, here's what it would cost, here's how that translates into an ask of the community. And that's the activity that we're doing every session to a degree. And I think now we're going to be kind of narrowing down into more of the, what are the moving parts, what's the recommendation that maximizes quality buildings and programming, an efficient portfolio, less cost into building maintenance, especially aging building maintenance long-term, so that more dollars can go into student success and staff experiences and all those things. And how does that intersect with an ask that we can get the community behind? So there's a lot of could becomes, could be's on this slide, but it shows the current footprint and, you know, just the moving parts where we could try to model some different scenarios. And Stephen mentioned from the community engagement sessions, I think there was an appreciation for getting creative, thinking through how could these pieces fit together, and this represents some of that. We talked a lot about CTE and a real enthusiasm and need for that to engage students with those interests and passions and also prepare them for great career opportunities. So Carpenter, you know, could remain pre-K or could become part of our thinking around a CTE center. You know, the 6 grade schools currently K through 5 could remain that way, or make those K through 4 and have some other transitions in grades 5, 6, and 7, 8. And that's really where we get into the Jefferson and Northeast questions. And I think everybody's aware Northeast is, I think we all agree, is the most acute kind of building issue. And that's pretty clear. So as we think about how to reinvest there, and Jefferson also probably requires some reinvestment, but not like Northeast, we can think about which buildings, you know, they could both remain 6, 7, 8 potentially, or you could think about one as 5, 6, one as 7, 8. And those have different costs, right? So again, back to that intersection of what we all would like, but what's reasonable in terms of those 3 legs of the stool. And then obviously thinking about Dow High and Midland High, we know Midland High has excess capacity. We could stay the course with 2 buildings, grades 9 through 12. We could look at Dow High as a 7-8 building, which would alleviate some investment. And then as we talked about, you know, Midland High could be then grades 10 through 12, but also use some Midland High space to build a 9th grade transitional building, if you will, with a CTE investment. So you kind of make that more of a campus that has 9th grade, CTE, and then a building for 10 through 12. So a lot of scenarios. I don't want to get ahead of the conversation because these are just scenarios, but this is what we've been asked to do, and we're piecing these together and thinking about that intersection of responsible stewardship of resources, about responsible facility management, quality programming, and community input, and trying to drive forward a solution. So, Stephen, I don't know if you have anything else on
I think that's great. I think this was exciting to get community feedback and really get them talking in those community engagement sessions. And like, you know, we mentioned the community appreciated seeing some of this stuff and the creative solutions that we're going into developing a plan moving forward. So with that, we can open up to general Q&A.
Paul, I know there's no consensus on much of anything right now and that you guys are all evaluating ideas. Do you think it's safe to say that the steering committee envisions an MPS with fewer facilities to maintain as, I guess, the most fiscally responsible path forward?
I would say, and Stephen and Kenny have been in all the conversations too, so they could answer. I'm not 100% certain that's consensus yet.
Okay.
I would say. I think there's kind of a head and heart kind of discussion going on in the committee, which I think there's kind of a head and a heart conversation going on in the community as well. And so I think that's where we're at. I think so I don't think there's consensus to that just yet. That's how I would say it.
First of all, Paul, thank you for your time and dedication to the schools in this endeavor. I know it's not easy, so thank you. As you've been going through, and the committee's been looking at these options, I was wondering how you're thinking about any possible redistricting lines as a way to avoid bigger expenditures than would otherwise have to be made.
Yeah, definitely it's part of the conversation, right? I think if you look at the capacity of Dow High, somewhere around 1,800, I think, if I recall correctly, and the capacity of Midland High. Mm-hmm. Midland High, 1,800, Dow High, maybe 12, 1,300, 13, roughly. You could have one high school in town that's larger than the other, use them both to their full capacity. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the challenge is then you still get into an inequity of experiences, because what you can offer in different buildings might be different. We've talked a little bit about what if one was very different, in terms of what it offers and kind of the curriculum base and those kind of things, and one was more traditional. But then that gets hard because people will be choosing maybe one or the other. They wouldn't naturally even out to the numbers that are assigned to their capacities. If you created like a different program in one versus the other, I think of like Saginaw and the SASA as an example. And we haven't really talked about that too much, but so I think there's been some thought about that. But building efficiency is critical. My day job, for those that don't know, is managing buildings for Dow around the world and thinking about how they're utilized, optimal utilization to take down daily, year-to-year operating costs, but also, reinvestment needs is critical. Yeah. So I think building optimization, building efficiency, to Ann's comment and your question, Phil, I think is really, really important. Because one of the guiding values, responsible stewardship of funds, right? And there's a point where it becomes irresponsible to maintain a footprint that's larger than the district, larger and kind of misaligned than the district needs. So that's really important.
I think a lot about the what you said in experiences for our students and allowing them. I think MPS has long had this sense of pride around how diverse our curriculum offering is and allowing students to choose their own path. And, think a lot about the curriculum offerings in how the buildings are structured, right? And continuing with the model that we're under may have to, in the future, cut programmatic offerings, right? We're starting to get to a point where we have to adjust and live within our means. And, the balance that you talked about between the head and the heart of what's efficient versus what's the legacy of the district and trying to balance those is something that we're all wrestling with. So
one other thing, and I'm a parent of soon to be 2 MPS grads in another month or so. And among my peers and some of my peers on the committee who have, for various activities, have been around the state for other facilities, and they look at other high schools and say, gosh, that's leaps and bounds ahead of either Dow High or Midland High from a facility experience perspective. And then if you look, and we've learned some of this, they're efficient with their footprint, and they're probably have a higher kind of steady state millage rate.
Yep.
So again, back to the three-legged stool. Traverse City might be an example. They were kind of peer with us on millage rate, but you think about, back to John's question about property values and a lot of high taxable value properties without full-time residents and without kids in the district. That's a nice
lot of
position to be in.
non-homesteaded, non-homestead.
And the other part of that too is 3 mills for the past 25 years is a lot compared to 2.5 mills over the last 10.
Yeah.
Like that, where that Traverse City example there too.
I think I think as a whole, when you look at that whole timeline, you look at all of our buildings, you look at everything we've done, I think Midland Public, our general fund balance as it's gone up and down, like we've seen a ton tonight in regards to the fact that we really do live within our means. We have an extremely generous community for a lot of our extracurricular programming, but in general, we have an exceptional staff. We have a lot of staff for, we've got 17 buildings. That's huge when you compare, to some of those other districts that we're looking at, close by. I think I love your example, Paul. Thank you again for being here. You've articulated so well so many of the challenges that we're facing in a really succinct way. So thank you for doing that tonight in a public setting. But we can't do this alone, right? I think that's the biggest piece where we're at from a community standpoint and a financial standpoint is I was at the last community engagement session, and one of the things that was really exciting for me to hear where there were 2 response questions. One was, what do you think people would rally around? What are you excited about in regards to this? And the other one was, what if we don't do anything? What happens in 10 to 20 years? And that was, I think, really enlightening for people that were in the audience to start thinking about, well, if we don't do anything at all, what the repercussions of that are. And they ripple out as opposed to when you look at the fact of 33 cents a day and how that ripples out in a completely different fashion. And so, I think the biggest thing for me that I'm struggling with at this point, right? The learning curve for the steering team has been all of these things. And we have from now until August, really, to get the whole community on that steep of a learning curve. And how we do that it's going to have to be really deliberate and really intentional in order to have one goal in mind of what comes next. So, yeah.
That's the challenge, that communication on the mass scale. It's complex and challenging. And the perspectives on it are all valid. We have them. We have the discussions in our group once a week for a few hours in the evenings, and makes you pause and test some of your own assumptions that you may have had going in, which I have done. So, yeah, it's a community conversation, but also enthusiastically advocating for the future, right? That's the point. We got to be future looking. You all hear, and you will hear about past decisions, right, on reducing the footprint previously, which was generally a good decision. And any decision like that, maybe you would have, or the board at the time, looking out 20 years from that, might have made a few different choices in that. Maybe not. But that's done. We got to look forward.
So, thank you. I think one thing that we did accomplish in this discussion is going non-state qualified. I really struggle with the terminology non-qualified. It's still a lot of work and diligence that goes into it. So it's just qualified by MPS instead of the state treasury, right?
Yeah, and Phil, if I might jump in, we have had previous conversations through strategic planning about the importance of working from a place of integrity to ensure that our community can trust us. And I think that translates here to this conversation. So our intention, as Stephen noted, would be to build out a similar document and create our own mechanism for reporting out and, accountability and responsibility. So just want to alleviate any concerns that you all might have as board members about that.
And that would be shared with the community?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we just had the action item around taxable values of neighboring districts. Anything else? Thank you very much.
But the comparison districts.
Yes.
Grand
Yeah.
Traverse, East Grand Rapids.
Grand Blanc.
Grand Blanc, yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, if you MPS towards match, 10 years, comparison to locally,
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Item number 6, request to address the board. First up, I had Don Hinkle. Welcome, Don.
Don Hinkle, I was pleased to see areas talking about safety and security. I'm just going to talk about that just a little bit. It's a big deal. We know that. We've got 3 grandchildren in the school system. My daughter teaches in the school system part-time. We've got lots of people we know with children and grandchildren in the school system. So if you do a Google search for school security consultants, there are many results, including some in Michigan. And when you look at who their people are, you'll see we're talking about former Secret Service, FBI, Homeland Security, military and police. And they do specialize in K through 12 school systems. And so I'm not advocating for any particular company, but I am hoping that as you look at school and building security throughout the whole system, you would engage one of these professional companies. Now, if you do that, 2 things are going to happen. 1, it's going to be different than what you have now. And 2, it will probably cost millions of dollars. So I just want to go on the record, no matter how many millions of dollars it is, I'm in favor of it and would gladly vote for it when it's dedicated to building security. So I got a lot more to say on this. That'll be next month, okay? Because I want to talk about this past Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Dow High put on Mary Poppins. I don't have the language to express how wonderful it was in every way, just every way. It was great. And so I'm not eloquent in these things, so I'll just say probably a few people that I would like maybe to mention. The director, Adam Gardner, assistant director, Jenny Lowe, they spent months and months working on this, and it was really outstanding. The other I found out was a secret weapon was Amanda Tomes, who is the orchestra pit director. When we go, because when we have grandkids in the play, we go to every performance. So we were there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then we sit on different sides and up so we can get a different view. Last night, I realized that Miss Tomes was the secret weapon, because when Mary Poppins was getting ready to sing, she was looking at the conductor who then started it. And so she was conducting not only the orchestra, but all the timing of all the music and the singing and dancing. She was really outstanding. And if you can imagine sitting there for about 2.5 hours, you know, she got a workout. So if you have a facility or a way to compliment them, at least those three, because it really was outstanding in every way. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Next on the list is Adam Ryan.
Just while we're switching, we had kids who flew during this production. Like, this was like, it was a big deal. And from a music standpoint, Midland Public Schools is one of the only schools in the entire state that has a student pit orchestra for our musical performances. So, sorry.
No, you're all right. Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Adam Ryan. I'm the father of a student at Woodcrest Elementary. I am here tonight because my daughter Lily has been physically assaulted 4 times this school year by multiple students, and despite months of documented effort, the school has failed to create a safe environment for her. I want to be specific because specifics matter. On February 13th, my wife sent a written email to Lily's teacher, specifically naming the students who'd been physically harming her. On February 16th, the teacher responded that she would keep it on her radar. On February 17th, Lily was punched twice in the head at recess by the exact students named in that email. The same teacher who received the warning was present and stopped the assault, but no incident report was filed. We were not notified. We found out from our daughter. Following that assault, Lily was interviewed by a substitute principal without our knowledge or either of us present. Our daughter sat in that office alone. And then rather than being supported as a victim, Lily was forced to apologize to the boy who punched her twice in the head. These same students had been verbally bullying Lily since the beginning of the school year. After months of enduring their harassment, she responded with words, and for that, the school made a 9-year-old little girl, a 3rd grader who had just been physically assaulted, look her attacker in the eye and say she was sorry. A child was punched in the head twice, and your school made her apologize for it. On March 5th, we agreed to move Lily to a new classroom. Lily did not move until March 16th, 11 days later. Her new teacher did not know her name, did not know her gender, knew only 2 initials, LR. The transfer was not entered into the system until April 7th, 3 weeks after Lily arrived. The teacher herself told us this is not normal. This little girl walked into a new classroom carrying months of trauma, and the school could not even be bothered to tell her new teacher she was a little girl. Despite everything, the assaults have continued. On April 17th, Lily was assaulted again by a different student entirely. 4 assaults, multiple perpetrators. The school has a culture problem. I am asking the board to investigate the pattern of assaults and the school's failure to respond, review recess supervision at Woodcrest Elementary, ensure the student resource officer process that was never completed is addressed, and to ensure that no child is ever made to apologize to their attacker. This documentation exists and will be submitted to you all through email tonight. The school has decided it is safe to fail my daughter, and I am here asking you to prove it is not. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Adam. We will be sure to follow up. Renita Bonadies.
Good evening, Renita Bonadies. You voted last year to continue the 2.95 mils bond debt payment for the 2025 summer tax bills, but then reduced it to 2.50 mils for the winter tax bill with an adjustment for the city residents. Your official Form 3881 stated the estimate needed was 2.3 mils. So you did not reduce it to the expected amount. This kept about $600,000 extra in your reserves for future bond payments or campaign number manipulation. There was a presentation last September at the board meeting where PFM explained that all this was legal as a district can collect more than they owe in bond debt for the year. The district will set the millage for the summer tax statement soon. The city residents will soon see the 50% on their summer tax bill. What will the rate be? Will it drop to the 2.19 mils that the Form 3881 projected, or will you leave it higher so that there's more room to manipulate numbers during the next bond? Many in the community are struggling, and now some residents have had damage from the recent flooding. I do hope you will keep this in mind as you set the new millage for the school bond debt for 2026. Trust and transparency are going to be critical as you approach the next bond. I attended the infrastructure session last week. There was a reference to the growth study that projected a 2% increase in the next 5 years. Just a reminder, that study was out of California and cost about $500. It did not take all of the local factors like homeschooling and local employment levels into account. Just 1 year after that report was used in the last bond campaign and projections, MPS experienced a decrease of 142 students this school year, a 1.6% decrease in enrollment for the current school year. That's a significant number compared to the projection. In fact, that's the second largest loss in a given school year in the past 10 years. 2021-22 during COVID was the highest. As I mentioned at that meeting that night, MPS includes early fives in the kindergarten enrollment counts, which began in 2018 and 2019 and accounts for about 50 to 60 students each year. Will the loss of 67 kindergartners this school year have an impact on future elementary numbers and growth projections for the district? These are just a few things to keep in mind as this progression to the next bond proposal develops. I encourage the community to consider attending these community sessions and voicing your concern and support as the plans are coming together. And I'm very glad to hear that there will be something comparable to a 3881 type information packet made available to the public. Thank you.
Joe Bonadies.
First, thank you for putting the individual email addresses for the board members on the website. There have been multiple occasions where I would have liked to send something to a single board member which was not applicable for the entire board. One step closer to your elite comparisons goals. I thank the superintendent for the information on the strategic planning project. I'm disappointed that the individual comments submitted by the public were not available for review by the public, as had been the case in the previous bond adventure. We were told this would be available by Omnitech during those sessions. I'm not even sure that the panel saw all the raw comments, but only used the summaries. I'd like to talk about the new school at Fast Ice, which I will sarcastically call Sparkle City Virtual Academy. Why are you going down that road and want to bang heads with companies that have been doing that for 25 years? I mean, I'm okay if it's an administrative assistance where you can help people with the paperwork, but the idea of diverting school teachers to go create new curriculum is a waste of time and energy and teaching resources. I'm not sure a digital education has value at all in these current times, but that's another topic for another day. The model for the new school seems to be achieving its economic viability based on attracting students from outside the district. We just heard at the last facilities meeting that we are not going to do the build it and they will come model, which this does not seem to be aligned with. So just trying to figure out, why are we doing this? It's, again, if you want to just keep track of students and help people who don't want to do the paperwork for Virtual Academy somewhere else or by some process, that's fine. But we don't need to customize something where you're going to be fighting a major corporation. Thank you.
John and Joni Wing. They leave. Oh, okay. Oh, got it. That was everybody that signed up ahead of time. Does anybody else care to address the board? Suzanne?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Reel, a Midland resident. I've been paying attention to our facilities challenge since the early community sessions in 2024, and I'm excited about what the Blueprint for Tomorrow team is working on. I have more on that because I agree with everything, Paul, that you shared tonight. I think the latest facilities assessment published in March provides an extraordinary new level of clarity and opportunity. We are living in a moment of turbulent change and transition. Committing a substantial amount of money in the short term would be very high risk, as would locking ourselves into a future footprint at this time. At the same time, ignoring our most critical issues is also very high risk. Reactively fixing things costs far more than proactively, both financially and in terms of public trust. So what is the right answer? I set out to investigate, and I'm going to be a little bit bolder than usual tonight. I feel the sense of urgency. I felt it last March in the board meeting with the questions that were asked, and I confirmed that urgency in the data. While the Blueprint for Tomorrow committee is doing important work to look at the problem in a holistic way, I became very curious about a minimum viable starting point, which I think is critical to understand. We may choose to do more, and we can debate longer-term direction, but the minimum we need to do now needs to be 100% defendable. I began analyzing the 400-page facilities assessment carefully to understand what we needed now versus what could be deferred with manageable risk. I used 3 objective and non-negotiable priorities. 1, student safety. 2, facility availability, meaning our schools are open all day, every school day. And 3, financial austerity and stewardship. After many iterations and pressure testing the data, I discovered a starting point that reduces the $231 million 3-year challenge by over 92%, scoped as a 4-year sinking fund under 1.5 mils. What was fascinating is it also includes and depends on some rebalancing of building utilization, which can be temporary, unlike redistricting. And this helps to manage facility stress and risk, which also had substantial positive financial impact to what's possible in 4 years. I say this is all a starting point because I only had the facilities assessment and my AI engineers to work with, so more due diligence would be required by our experts. You can't safely defer things without looking at the long-term impact. So the minimum viable longer-term plan I uncovered that stays under the average mills of our comparison districts looks like a staircase, a bridge to the future. A sinking fund proposal this November covers only, may I finish?
Quickly.
May I finish? Quickly. Covers only our most critical scope, and then another small millage step up to a bond vote in 2030, when hopefully things are more clear and more stable, can fund a new facility and additional repairs. After that, just 8 short years later, the 2038, the 2015 bond ends, opening a new opportunity for funding what's next. We're at the starting line of a journey, and building a bridge to the future is going to be our generation's contribution. It will take patience, flexibility, and support of the entire community to be successful. And I would love to talk with people about how we can expand community involvement to do that. I'm happy to share any of it with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Anybody else? Welcome.
My name is Dave Romanesco. At the last school board meeting, Phil Roush responded to my statement that, quote, "Our SAT scores are better than pretty much anybody else in this state." I do not quibble with that statement. However, high SAT scores are generally with the top 20% of students. What I've been talking about is the next 80% of students. Those are the students that ultimately occupy most of the jobs in America. While I don't doubt the veracity of Phil's statement, I would appreciate a reflective position, as this proficiency data comes from the state MSTEP. It's not my data. I was emphasizing Chestnut Hill, which is my neighborhood school. Proficiency for reading is 46.4%. Math is 25%. This is the same neighborhood school that Dave and Sue Guessford would rebuke me regarding proficiency as well. Having proficiency at least at 75% does not make you Steve Jobs in creating Apple, but many jobs are available for those who have reading and math skills at the 75% level. The Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2024 had data that says math skills set children up for financial success. In fact, the median annual wage of math occupations is $104,000 versus $49,000 for the rest. Our founder and second president of the United States, John Adams, said, quote, "Let us dare to read, think, speak, and write. Wisdom and knowledge, as well as virtue, diffused generally among the body of the people, are necessary for the preservation of their rights and liberties." Close quotes. Does not subject matter proficiency create opportunity for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Are not skills and capabilities pursued and polished via proficient subject matter excellence? The issue of proficiency in reading and math, as well as time goes on in other educational subjects, are important to all students, as well as MPS. It seems appropriate that all students should be above that 75% level. It allows students to seek better employment rather than 25% math. I expect that most every parent wants their child in that arena and in this school district. The point is that most all problems can go away if MPS and the school board plan, organize, and execute with continuous improvement to reach the goal of 75% proficiency. I am confident teachers can do that job. Penny and Phil, you stated in your letter, quote, "We encourage you to remain focused on what's needed for our students to succeed and prepare for careers and bright futures," close quote. I believe educational proficiency is what is needed. I suspect all parents do. Proficiency has been declining since 2015. The top graphic, blue is Midland Public Schools, the red is the state, and notice that they're coming closer together. The trend is not good. Proficiency is the currency of jobs. Continuous improvement in elementary education has not happened at Midland Public Schools for the last 15 years. As you say, quote, "For our students to succeed and prepare for careers and bright futures," unquote. You have to do better than what we're doing now. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Item number 7 is curriculum instruction and assessment. Item 7.1, the CIA Study Committee notes from March 16th and April 8th.
Two sets of committee meeting notes tonight. On March 16th, those of us present for the meeting were myself, Ann Horowitz, Mecki Craig, Ken Weaver, Penny Miller-Nelson, along with Jen Service, Troy Lynch, Andrea Jazwiak, Volosny Marugan, and Lucas Peles. We met here, and the first thing we did was Ken Weaver, Jen Service, Troy Lynch, Andrea Jazwiak, Volosny Marugan, and Lucas Peles presented staff development proposals for the 2026-2027 school year, which you'll see in a minute. Troy also presented on the artificial intelligence software pilot that's being conducted in April and May by classroom teachers. And then Andrea Jazwiak presented the updated sex education video resource for use in our 5th grade maturation units, which you will also be, I think it's for information tonight. The meeting adjourned at 2:45 on March 16th. We also met on April 8th Members present were myself, Ann Horowitz, Mikey Craig, Ken Weaver, Penny Miller-Nelson, Anna Womack, and Brian Bruton. We had a guest presentation from Stephen Gunther, Kenny Babinski, and Kevin Boucher from Clark Construction. And we met here as well. The meeting touched on the strategic planning with the administration team advising that they're working on the full strategic plan, and components will be shared with the full board once complete. And then we also spent time on the facilities assessment with the committee discussing the facilities assessment and the work of the steering team, which you've also heard more about tonight, and information gathered at the first community engagement session. That meeting adjourned at 9:30 a.m. on April 8th.
Thank you, Jen. Item 7.2 is for action, new school program.
Yeah, tonight we have, we're asking for action on the school proposed by Lucas Pellis last month. The school would have two programs within it, one a flexible learning program, and the other would be an alternative learning program as well. Both programs would have a little bit lower graduation requirements. This would meet the needs of Midland Public Schools kids that we're finding that are moving to alternative programs, first of all, in other districts and across the state as well. We believe that we can meet the needs of our kids much better than these programs can. And so the program that would be one, first and foremost, that it would be doing would be looking at piloting next year. This program, looking at probably about 18 and a half credits. That will be coming before the board as well too, and the CIA subcommittee as well too, coming forth. As well as there would be the flexible learning program, which would not just only be virtual, but would also look at blending in with other learning options, competency-based learning, CTE programs and other programs as well too, and would have a little bit higher graduation credit requirement, about 21 and a half, just a little bit lower than the 22 and a half. We would begin this program as well. Most of this, a lot would be virtual, but not all of it would be virtual. Some of it would be, we use Ingenuity, we'd be looking at other vendors as well as there would be some course creation eventually down the road. But next year, it would be a small pilot of about 25 kids that are currently Midland Public School kids. I don't know if you have any other questions.
So, Ken, role of public schools is to serve every student that lives in our district?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. What we are saying is we are presenting a new school program that better serves a handful of our students.
Yes, especially the alternative program as well as the virtual. We have quite a few kids that are currently sitting at both Dow and Midland High School that are taking online classes through that environment. And we have a growing number of kids that have expressed a desire either through different challenges that they have or just different modalities of learning, would like to experience the virtual learning, and if done well, it is a very viable option.
So there's a comprehensive assessment that would have to be done between the district, the student, and the parent to get into either of these programs, correct?
Yes, for the alternative program, it would be mostly juniors and seniors that are usually going to be somewhat credit deficient already, that we've seen vast evidence that the traditional setting hasn't necessarily met their needs.
Yep.
And so we would be looking at making that decision with the parents and the counselors and the school administrators to enroll that student in that program.
And this is not a desire to just go out and get anybody and everybody from around the state of Michigan. This is
No,
to
it is
serve
not.
MPS students.
We can't do that.
Got it. All right.
Ken, can you remind us, have we communicated with students who are learning virtually at this point to gauge interest in this program? And I know year one would be a smaller cohort, but what, if the answer to that is yes, and I just need a reminder, what kind of interest has been shown?
Mr. Pellis, who currently would be heading up this school and supervising it as well too, has talked with many of his students through the PASS program, which are learning virtually currently, as well as he oversees the virtual learning that happens in both Midland High and Dow as well too, through the ELFs program, the electronic learning facilitators, as well too. We have not surveyed as far as gone out and surveyed any further than that. That would be as we go through this year, as we get the pilot up, as we're learning, and then as well too, then piloting and going from there. But we do feel that we have a definite need here we have between 200 and 250 kids, 9 through 12, that are currently choosing to go to virtual learning schools at other places and that. And we feel, like I said, once again, that we can do this better than a large corporation.
So if we indicate tonight that, yes, we want to move forward with this, what kind of financial, what are we agreeing to financially for year one?
For year one, you're looking at a commitment of around like 2 staff. That would be Mr. Pellis's time in that. He's already split between several buildings in that. But you would be looking at establishing some staff at the Fast Ice. That would begin with creating courses as well as supervising those kids that are in that programming, trying to meet their needs and trying to do that. That would be the first step, as well as an assistant that would, and not assistant principal, but like an AA or an OP that would help him with registration and so forth.
So what's the number associated with that?
It was, let me see if I can find it real quick. We're looking at, because you also have the revenue from the kids generating, but the expenses would be about $505,000 at year one is what we looked at, with about 256 generated. It'd be something that would operate at a deficit to begin with, but then slowly over time you would see that change.
So just to put a clarity to this, what you're approving tonight, should you choose to do so, is for us to move forward with the concept we've shared. We need to get moving forward with the Department of Education to establish this, start to build out some of these details. We would come back to you, as Ken indicated, first through the study committee, then through the full board with the graduation requirements for your consideration and approval, and a fun part, which will be a name. We haven't quite landed on that. And of course, a commitment to keeping you up as pilot progresses and with close monitoring for those success points.
Can you tell us a bit more of what, this being a pilot, what sort of information will be gathered and what an assessment might look like after we've had 1 year of experience with the program?
Do you want to take a stab at that, and I'll add on?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost would be the success of the students that are in the program and credits earned, and hopefully graduations as well too. These are students that are currently having some challenges where they're at. So hopefully you would see, while it would always be great to see 100% satisfaction with credits and that, but also as well too, how does it meet their needs? I would think that surveying the students would be first and foremost, and parents, to see how the program was able to meet their needs and to adapt to their unique learning challenges, and to make sure that they were being as successful as possible. So that's a lot of the criteria we would look at as we get going, as well as what kind of course creation or what kind of other learning programs could be used or utilized as we went forward and as we develop different avenues for that.
I'll just add in, Mekhi, what I know about Lucas and about our new strategic plan and our commitments around our new vision and mission and values and graduate profile. I know Lucas will be very interested in ensuring that we're monitoring what these students' pathways are to success beyond high school. To Ken's point, I think the clearest data point is, do we get you to a diploma, and a meaningful diploma where we've not lowered expectations? But then what's next, and how are we setting you up for success with what's next? And I believe that will be baked into this, and I'm interested in that being part of this overall assessment as well.
Yeah, many of these kids are kids that are looking already at that next step, and then sometimes foregoing that diploma, which in the immediate might be a good decision, but down the road, when the military or other options are no longer there, or they're looking to earn more income, that not having that diploma turns out to be not a very good decision at the time. So trying to keep on those kids engaged and trying to get them to a diploma, which then is the gateway to further education and further development, especially, you know, as we all look back to the time when we were young, 17, 18 years old. I look back at my youth and some of the decisions I made and cringe and can't believe. And it's very important to realize that we don't always make the best decisions at that age. So trying to hold on to the child and making sure that we're able to give them the best chance at future success and getting them to that, cross that line and getting that diploma so that they have that opportunity down the road, that those doors are not closed to them, that many times as they then get older and mature and as their decision-making gets better, they're able then to have those opportunities there.
Do I have a motion to approve item 7.2?
I have one more question. Why now?
Why now? That's a good question. That's one of the things that I think that as far as seeing the need, I think drove a lot of it. Talking with Lucas, both, he has a passion for this. He's done this many places before, helped alternative kids. I mean, he really gets invested in the kids and trying to help meet their needs. And a lot of this came from him in seeing that there was a need here, that he was losing kids and not able to help them because of many times, like especially with the alternative path, they saw the number of credits as a barrier because many of these other programs have the 18 or 18 and a half credits, which is the, you know, the basic MMC credits and so forth. And it really, that passion to be able to help those kids and to give them this opportunity, that's something that really drives Lucas as well as myself as well. I've developed different programs and helped increase those opportunities for kids, and that's really what education is about, is trying to get kids to see the potential in themselves and trying to hold on to them and trying to get them to realize that and see that and to be able to live into all that they can be. And I think that's important that we're able to give that opportunity. And I think that as Midland and the traditional approach that we have to education is so strong, I think we have a lot to offer and to develop and to infuse into a program like this.
And just to add on that question, Fast Ice is also a key piece to this, right? Having a new building and new location that we didn't have a year ago. So like that plays into the application to the state to be able to offer a program like this.
Yes. Yes. Some of the rules have changed around with online classes and that, and to be able to have that facility there as well to open this possibility up as well too. So it just was fortunate, but a lot of it, like I said, is driven by the passion and the want to try to serve the kids and their needs.
Do I have a motion to approve item 7.2?
Support.
Motion by Lauterbach, support by Ringgold. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving item 7.2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7.3.
I didn't vote, Phil.
Okay.
I'm really conflicted on this. I know that it would put a significant cramp in our plans, but are we going to have a full board at the next board meeting? And could we table this for the next board meeting?
So we have a quorum present and there is a vote in the midst. The timing does matter in terms of our ability to submit to the Department of Ed and to be moving forward in order to offer this in the fall.
The way that I look at this is we are a public school district. That means we are supposed to educate every single student that enters our buildings. We have identified a better way to serve 250 students, give or take. if that's what it costs in terms of dollar and cents, then we should figure out how to do it. I don't really see this as anything more than that, because we've seen the success longitudinally with the PATHS program. We have administrators that are passionate about serving our most vulnerable students. And if we can keep them engaged in our district, I truly feel that we can serve them better than anybody else.
And what's your hesitation?
My hesitation is, I think it's twofold. One, I've participated in some online learning and I have some concerns about its effectiveness, but I certainly understand the argument that if these kids aren't in classrooms anyways, we want to be able to educate them. I think that I don't know that the timing looks to the public will look amazing. So I have some concerns that there could be some public response that will impact us even more. I think those are my primary hesitations.
I think speaking kind of to some of the other things that we've heard, at one point, my 3 children were in virtual school. And I think what this particular situation offers is the ability to be able to do virtual learning with a personal connection to Midland Public Schools, which I think is unique and different and really, really important as compared to what we're seeing with students who are like, I can't do this, I'm not doing this, and they're going somewhere where they don't have that support. Where this way, they're still part of our community, they're still part of Midland Public Schools. We have administrators and teachers who are passionate about them and able to offer them that piece, even though they're taking virtual classes. So that point of connection is completely and utterly worth it to me in seeing this unfold.
Very recently, when I was in high school, I also had, there was one class that I took that was online, and I had similar experience to what you're describing. But I do appreciate the points made also about who the needs we're trying to serve with this particular program. Is there, as you're looking at this as a pilot, can we also get information back about who this program will best serve and how it, like, can we focus on some of the things that Anna's concerned about so that we see, actually, yes, in this particular group, this is the best option for them? Because I'm assuming by pilot, we're saying we're going to take a stab at this and then evaluate again at the end of the year and see if this is best for us.
Absolutely. That is our intent with the pilot. I'll also just offer my 2 cents. We can't say no to online learning in many ways. First off, legally, students have the right to take a certain number of online classes. I think to Jen's point, this trend is the trend. We can still continue to create the best in-person, full-time experience that we can and keep kids in our schools in that more traditional way. I think that's great. The fact of the matter is, this is the market. This is where it is. And to meet these students' needs, we need to go to them and offer them what they need right now. And I personally think our team is better equipped to do this than anyone else. And I do love the vision that Lucas and Ken have of still creating a sense of community with these students. We aren't just turning them, go to your device and never talk to a human again. And we have that personal connection with them and hopefully their family or, the adults who are caring for them, and try to build, all of those other attributes that we want in addition to the academic content. I think it's worth the risk that we're taking to see if this model can work for the group of students who we're called to serve as Midland Public School students. And I appreciate your concern. And to Mecky's point, I think the curriculum study committee, this will be something that you will follow throughout next year and really keep a pulse on.
So I have recorded 4 yeses and look to you as to, you want me to record yes or no?
You can record yes. I will say that I do recall during Lucas's presentation, and I've seen it twice now, so I don't recall which time, but thinking this guy has passion, and
Yeah,
I'm
he does.
pretty sure that even he could convince me to eat meat. So, like,
all right.
All right. Let me just add one thing real quick is I myself have been skeptical at times over online learning. The district I came from was a heavy player. One of the things that we did there was we made sure that it was a quality program. We had MTSS, full-blown MTSS system to help kids and to make sure that kids didn't slip through the cracks. We made sure that they had a full school improvement process as well, too. It was a full-blown school, and quite honestly, at the end, they had a better continuous improvement process, an MTSS process, than some of our buildings. And that's important. It was very important to me that as I oversaw that program, that it be of quality and it made sure it met the needs of the kids as well too. And that connection, our teachers reached out on a daily basis out to the kids, and we kept track of where they were at in the curriculum, and it ended up with a completion rate that was one of the highest and still is, I believe, in the state. And that's important. Every kid is important. How they learn is important. And that is what is, I think, with Lucas is what you're gonna get. That's why I'm drawn to him as well too, and that passion that he has for kids and for try to meet every one of their needs and trying to be there for them. Sometimes I have to pull him back a little bit with some of his things that he does. But it's all with a kind heart and trying to make sure that kids' needs are met. And I think your concerns are valid, and we will try to do our best to meet those needs and keep you updated as we move forward.
Good discussion. Thank you. Item 7.3 for information, staff, and curriculum development proposals. Ken.
Yeah, the district recommends 18 staff and curriculum development proposals for consideration following the 28-day period of public input. They will be presented for action at the May 18th, 2026 Board of Ed meeting. These proposals reflect the identified needs for curriculum and staff development and align with the continuous improvement process. I'm not going to read all of these to you. I am just going to highlight a couple of them. One is Zello. It's titled Zello. Zello is the old career cruising. I don't know if you remember that. It's the educational development plan process. It helps kids choose careers, line up their courses with what they're doing. This is something that we're working on and is very important to me, making sure kids understand how what they take today and what they take in high school aligns with what they want to do in the future. And we're working with our counselors and developing this curriculum and improving it as we go along. The other one I'd like to highlight is our online curriculum and online vendor review approval process. Mr. Paulus will be looking at developing, along with using teachers and staff, to develop a process for approval to check the quality of both the online vendors and as well as the curriculum that we're going to be using in our, not only in the new school, but also as well too, what we're currently using in the high schools as well too, and developing that process. Edgenuity is not the end all and the be all, and we are looking to try to expand our options for that. And then the last I'd like to bring up is the AI, where we're working on developing and our teachers' ability to use artificial intelligence. We saw a little bit of it today, and we're piloting currently some artificial intelligence products that are closed systems. They are made for schools, and that's important to realize. And I don't know all the terminology exactly, so I don't want to try to pull it out of my head right now. But it is a program that doesn't allow the kids to go anywhere with it. It's a contained environment. It also alerts teachers, like if a kid starts to put down that they are going to like self-harm or anything like that, the teacher is directly alerted. So this kind of branches off of that. This will help our teachers as we go forward and as we're piloting these and trying to choose a product to go forward with. And this will be at the secondary level. We are piloting a little bit at the elementary level, but it is going to be at the 6 through 12 level as we go forward. And this will help Mr. Lynch as well to help develop the needs of the teachers. There's a lot of efficiencies that can be had for teachers as they develop curriculum through the different products. And have that support of the artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Ken. Any questions for Ken on the staff development? Item 7.4 for information, sex education curriculum resource adoption.
Yeah, so as part of the sex ed advisory board, it had met, I think, about a little over around a year ago. There became some concerns over the resources that were currently being used. Matter of fact, mostly centered around 8th grade in a video by Bow Wow. But we ended up staying with that video. We'll get to it eventually someday. But we did look at the 5th grade videos and we updated them. The videos will be here for community members, parents, and it went through, first of all, I should back up. It went through the process. The sex ed teachers reviewed the different videos, went through, and they looked at many videos. They didn't just look at the ones they were currently using, but they ended up using an updated version of what they previously had used. It then was presented and shown at the SEB, which is the Sex Ed Advisory Board. It was approved there, went through at CIA, the subcommittee from the board saw it as well too. We use only one part of the videos. Nothing wrong with the second part. We just don't go that far in depth in our own curriculum here at Midland. And like I said, these videos will be here. People that want to view them can come here and check them out. Part of state law is that we have to have 2 public hearings for people to make comments on if they would like to. Also, they can have be able to view the materials. And of course, parents eventually always have the option to opt out. I also like to reiterate, this has nothing to do with the new health standards. We didn't adopt any of those. We didn't do anything with those. We are using, this is the same curriculum that's been taught in Midland for 20-some years, maybe even a little bit longer. The only thing is like I said, we're updating the videos, and that's it. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Ken.
So the process is, as usual, to bring this for information. It will come back for action at our next board meeting. And Sarah, remind me, we have this hearing and another one before action. Great.
So at this time, if there's anybody that would request to address the board regarding the public hearing on proposed revisions to the instruction in sex education. Okay. Item 9, Finance, Facilities, and Operations. 9.1, Study Committee Notes. John.
The FFO committee met on April 7th, 2026 at 1 p.m. Members present were Brad Blasey, Chair, Scott McFarland, John Lauterbach, Penny Miller-Nelson, Brian Brutin, and Anna Womack. Guests present were Stephen Gunther from GMB, Kevin Boucher from Clark Construction, and Mike Mogenberg from Midland Public Schools. The meeting started at 1 p.m. We reviewed the February financials. We also reviewed the trailer-mounted cooler bid, and the administration will propose awarding a bid for a trailer-mounted cooler. We discussed the Dow High walk-in cooler bid. The administration will propose awarding a bid for a walk-in cooler at Dow High. We discussed the concrete bid. The administration will propose awarding a bid for concrete work throughout the district. Food service renewal contract. The committee discussed the state approval of the food service management contract. We had an update on Fast Ice. The committee discussed the status of the Fast Ice building renovations. The administration will propose awarding a bid for camera equipment for Fast Ice. Strategic planning. The administration team is developing the full strategic plan, and components will be shared with the board once complete. Facilities assessment. The committee discussed the facilities assessment, the work of the facility steering team, and information gathered at the community engagement sessions. The meeting adjourned at 2:40 p.m.
Thanks, John. Item 9.2 for action, Dow High walk-in cooler. Anna.
Bids were solicited and a tabulation is provided for a walk-in cooler at Dow High. Administration recommends issuing a purchase order to Refrigeration and Mechanical Services of Greenville, Missouri for Greenville, Michigan for $75,715. Food service funds will be utilized for this purchase.
I move the adoption of item 9.2, awarding a purchase order to Refrigeration and Mechanical Services of Greenville, Michigan.
Support.
Motion by Lauterbach, support by Horowitz. Any discussion or questions? All in favor of approving item 9.2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item 9.3 for action, trailer mounted cooler. Anna.
Bids were solicited and a tabulation is provided for a trailer-mounted cooler for our food service department. Administration recommends issuing a purchase order to Spencer Trailers of Spencer, Indiana for $56,795. Food service funds will be utilized for this purchase.
I move the adoption of item 9.3, awarding a purchase order to Spencer Trailers of Spencer, Indiana for $56,795.
Support.
Motion by Lauterbach, support by Ringgold. Any discussion or questions on 9.3? All in favor of approving 9.3, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 9.4 for action, concrete bid. Anna.
Bids were solicited and a tabulation is provided for concrete repair work within MPS. Areas receiving work include Adams, Central Park, Dow High, Plymouth, Jefferson, and Midland High. Administration recommends issuing a purchase order to Stafford Landscaping of Memphis, Michigan for $94,412. Capital improvement funds will be utilized for this purchase.
Move the adoption of 9.4.
Support.
Motion by Lauterbach, support by Ringgold. Any discussion or questions? And I noticed in the drawings that we don't touch the city sidewalks. Is that something that we just have to follow up with the city on when there's issues, or who owns the sidewalk out front? Or is it split? We can follow up later.
My belief would be that would be a City of Midland, if not completely, then at least in joint, but we can follow up with them on that.
Okay. Thanks. All in favor of approving item 9.4, the concrete bid, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 9.5 for action, fast ice camera bid. Anna.
Administration recommends approving a purchase order to Mobile Communications America of Troy, Michigan for $77,412.40 for video security equipment for the new facility at Fast Ice Drive. This equipment will provide comprehensive video surveillance and safety monitoring throughout and around the building. The pricing provided by MCA was secured through the RIMC bid, ensuring compliance with board purchasing policy. This expenditure will be paid for through 31AA mental health and safety grant funds.
I move the adoption of 9.5, awarding the purchase order to Mobile Communications America of Troy, Michigan for $77,412.40.
Support. And I also have a quick question. The cameras, will they have all of the software that we have on like the Zero Eyes and things like that, or is this just for the cameras?
This pricing is just for the cameras, but we will be having the software onto there.
And Anna, is this security consistent or better than security at our other facilities, like at Dow and Midland High?
I can jump in, or Kara can. We talked about that as a team, and knowing that we'll have students in that building, we feel that we need to have a comparable, identical security protocol and system at that building.
All right, so motion by Lauterbach, support by Ringgold. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor of approving item 9.5, fast ice camera bid, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Item 9.6 for action, gifts totaling $25,092. Anna.
We have 3 items tonight totaling $25,092 that will require acceptance on behalf of the board. These items are a donation from H.H. Dow High Sports Boosters to Dow High for the installation of 8 electrical circuits for a scoreboard, the amount of $9,842. A donation from H.H. Dow High Sports Boosters to Dow High for the installation of Daktronics equipment, the amount of $9,250. And a donation from the Dorothy O. Minical Business Education Endowment Fund to both high schools for support of both BPA and DECA in the amount of $6,000. We would request that you approve accepting these gifts this evening.
So moved.
Support?
Motion by Horowitz, support by Ringgold. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of approving item 9.6, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, item 9.7 for information gifts. Anna.
The total amount of gifts listed for information only tonight is $24,210.39. These gifts this evening represent support from programs ranging from support for various sports teams at both high schools, field trips at Jefferson, Siebert, and Adams, orchestra, band, and choir at both high schools, welding program supplies at Midland High, and more. As is tradition, all donors are going to be recognized in the credits of this evening's broadcast and also through board correspondence upon your behalf. We're grateful for our community support of our students and our programs.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks to everybody that has contributed to the district. You covered 9.8 in your, as well, the items.
Yes, my apology.
Thank you.
Gifts of items were included in.
Okay. Item 10, Human Resources, 10.1 for information. Kara.
The board and staff extend their deepest sympathy to the family of Beth Chapman, who passed away on April 5th, 2026. Beth was employed as a paraprofessional in various locations throughout the district until her retirement in 2017 with 28 years of service. Following her retirement, she also served as a substitute paraprofessional from 2017 until 2019.
Thanks, Kara. Item 11, correspondence from the Board of Education to the following groups or individuals listed in your packet. Item 12 are scheduled activities for information with our forthcoming board meetings listed. And then, Sarah, can you double check the November 16th date? I thought that was the one that we changed, just offline. Correct. And then item 13, are there any points of clarification or comments from board members? Just wanted to correct a fact. We don't just test. A lot more than 20% of our students take the SAT. We utilize the SAT as the standardized testing for 11th grade, correct?
I think we're saying the same thing here, so let me check. The SAT is part of the state assessment. It's part of the Michigan merit exam that we're required to give, the SAT along with the PSAT.
Correct.
So all 11th graders are required to take the SAT.
Yes.
Just took it.
They just took it.
As in this point of clarification, how did that full testing day, everybody, like, because everybody tested rather than it just being...
Yeah, we had a really successful, so far, everything that's happened in testing has worked out well. And that SAT day, we had some special learning opportunities for students, for seniors, and it was a success thanks to our high schools and Ken and Brian, well, the whole team over here, and Kara, who helped plan that.
All right, thank you. I'll turn the floor over to Penny.
Yeah, I have a couple of just updates for the board. I'll start first with a big shout out, thank you to Dave and our tech team and our communications team. I think you all received notice that we had an issue with the vendor who provides our communications platform, and it was a shock to all of us, and we had to regroup very quickly to make sure that we had a seamless transition. Our attendance calling, some of our emergency notification systems, and how we generally communicate with families was interrupted, and worked over the weekend to ensure that we have a plan in place and really didn't miss a beat, and just incredibly thankful for the team who did that. We'll be sharing more with our families soon about what this new platform looks like and really get up and moving. I do want to share that we are on track with the schedule to move our robotics teams out of their current rental facility and out to Fast Ice. And again, just a lot of gratitude to our facilities team to get Fast Ice up and running the way they have, and we're really excited to get our robotics teams there. We are forming a work group, and it's important to me that you all have these insights. So it's sort of two work groups, similar content. The first is a work group to talk about technology use guidelines for students. So Ken and his team will be pulling together a group of teachers, administrators. We'll get parent input, and we are going to lean into the research that's emerging around technology use and understand what kind of guidelines we can provide elementary, lower L, upper L, middle school, and high school. And just, as a precursor, none is not an option, at least, when we get to third grade. Those students do need to use those devices for state testing, and they need to have some familiarity with them before that testing date comes. But we want to make sure we're using it in appropriate ways that are age and grade developmentally appropriate and that enhance learning. Similarly, Kara will be leading our cell phone guideline discussion with the new legislation. It's a K-12 requirement now that we have a policy. I expect Troon will issue a policy that will come to the board, and then we as an administrative group will determine those guidelines that will layer into that policy. Again, we'll bring together administrators. Our continuous improvement teams will be our gateway to gather teacher input, and we will put a couple of questions in that other technology survey specific to cell phones, just so we have a pulse of what our families, parents, and caregivers are thinking and feeling about that. So we look forward to that. We'll be ready to launch both of those sets of guidelines in the fall, and we'll communicate well in advance about those. Happy to share that we are hosting a countywide job fair again. We've done this for several years now and have invited the local districts and other partners. We'll be doing this on Monday, May 11th from 4 to 7 p.m. right here in this building. And we've had some success over the past years in hiring bus drivers, paraprofessionals, some teachers, I think even an administrator that we met through that experience. So we're excited to host that. Lots of great things happening. I say this every board meeting. But spring is an extra special time as we experience just the culmination of everyone's hard work and learning over the school year. I think you've heard a lot about the spring musicals, particularly Dow High, but Midland High had a great event as well. We have teams, our student clubs are just winning all over the place and headed to international competition, DECA, BPA, HOSA, robotics. We heard from Odyssey of the Mind tonight, which was extra special. We have art fair happening out at the Midland Mall. The elementary exhibit just came down, and the high school exhibit is being set up today, and then middle school will happen here in a week or so. Just really talented students being showcased across our community. And my last shout out, if you will, is to two of our administrators. So Jessica Brunzel is being honored this week out at Saginaw Valley as a hero in education. They select just a handful of alumni each year who are doing great things for students, and we're really proud to honor Jessica. So we'll be out there cheering for her Thursday evening. And I had previously shared that Kim Funnell, our state and federal program and continuous improvement specialist, is also being honored. I think this week, Ken, is the ceremony this week for Kim. And she's being honored as the educator with the Educator Award, and this is the official title of the organization. It's the Michigan Association of State and Federal Program Specialists. And Kim has been a leader in that organization for a long time and has done a lot of great work. And we're excited for Kim to have this honor, especially as she's already announced her retirement at the end of the year. I'll use this as an opportunity to share also, Kim knows this, we are actually not filling her position. That was one of those roles that we created when we had a specialized need around our grant funds that were coming in fast and furious. And we were really in that heavy lift of implementing MyKIP, the new continuous improvement model. We're through that initial need. After assessing that position, we've decided that we can disperse a few of those remaining responsibilities across our curriculum team, and our business office is going to step up in different ways to support the grant. So that is one example where we are really assessing opportunities to rethink how we're using our resources. All right, that's all I have for this evening. I just want to thank you for the dialogue regarding our facility planning. I think you can see that the steering team is working hard to take your insights along with the community engagement and the insights we get there, and to really formulate some recommendations that are going to move us forward. Your consensus this evening regarding the non-qualified route will be incredibly helpful to that steering team as they take their next steps. So thank you.
Thanks, Penny. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.